for suits and crew cuts. Say hello to the slickest legislator on 8 wheels, James Sugar Boots Franklin.
Franklin was an unlikely pioneer, a street-smart skater who admitted to being more concerned with impressing honeys with his silky smooth moves than with politics. Franklin began organizing boombox-carrying roller skaters, advocating for basic rights like roller skate-accessible ramps in government buildings and protected street lanes where they could lay down cones for some sweet slaloming.
Just because we like to roll it out and have a smooth, fluid style that cannot be denied doesn't mean we aren't Americans. Yeah, that's right.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and as always, you're invited to take control of the airwaves. If you want, 603-283-6160 if you would like to weigh in. Again, the number 603-283-6160. And on this Wednesday Night Live, it's Aria,
Nikki, and Bonnie.
Sorry, Bonnie was drinking water, so it was really bad timing.
I just started coughing out of nowhere.
So, in the news today, something about a judge was facing a... what was it, an ethics probe or some sort of thing like that. And people were essentially saying that she was doing some shady stuff.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about judges, especially state judges, man, some of them do some pretty shady things.
It seems to me like my gut instinct from just like skimming through this article is that it's hard to tell who's the bad guy here, but I think this lady got her nose into some stuff. She probably should have stayed out of everyone's business, and then she would have been fine.
Well, that tends to be the case with judges. Of course, I have not heard the story, so I don't really know anything about it, but I'm looking forward to it because that sounds tremendously fascinating. And there's so many layers to it because she ultimately resigned. Well, she resigned and then went on to kill herself.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, it's unclear if that's related or if it's just like, oh, she's also going through some stuff, but it's interesting.
It would be hard to you'd have the burden of proof on that you'd have to rise to if you wanted to say that it was not related, that she killed herself for completely unrelated reasons. Sorry, I'm going to have to ask whoever makes that claim to substantiate it. But first, artificial intelligence. We had this story last night. I really want to talk about it because I find it such an interesting concept, right? Like a lot of these science fiction shows like Star Wars, not Star Wars, I just made everyone on the internet angry. Star Trek in particular, it paints this world where humans don't have to work. Everything humans want is just done for them by computers and replicators. So replicators are the key technology in the Star Trek series that allow human beings to not have to do anything. You tell your computer, I want X, and it just generates X for you it rearranges molecules or whatever. Not theoretically impossible, but well beyond human technological capabilities. And the rise of all of these things causes humans to not have to work. They can just do whatever they want. They can spend all their time doing nothing or painting or making music or whatever because all of their needs are taken care of, right?
And the idea they still wanted governments is so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, that issue aside, I don't necessarily take issue with the world where all human need is solved by technology like this. And artificial intelligence is one way that we can get there. You know, people see the Star Trek series and they say things like, oh, well, such a society would never work. But I mean, yeah, it could.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, if you had that replicator technology, it would easily work. You don't have to work.
I forgot you were talking about Star Trek. Are there governments in Star Trek? I thought you were talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I don't know. I don't know
either.
Is the
Never
real
watched
answer to that question. Starfleet is I don't know if they're a government or not. Or they could be a corporation
but
for
on
all.
the other planets and stuff, do they run into planets that have governments?
Oh, certainly.
I'm sure, yeah.
I mean, yeah, most of the planets they encounter have governments, but those planets are generally still developing. They don't have replicator technology, so they still have people who have to work.
Oh, okay.
But I don't take issue with that. If we had that kind of technology, it's possible, and artificial intelligence sort of moves us closer to that. Artificial intelligence and 3D printers. 3D printers, obviously, it's a long way from the replicators that we see in the Star Trek series. It's a long way from being able to print a car tire, which has been revealed to be possible, and, telling a computer to build you a new computer. However, artificial intelligence is in the news, and I've got an article here about this guy who just doesn't seem to get it. I'm going to lose my job to an AI. ChatGPT does an hour of my work in seconds.
The New Mexicans.
I'm sorry?
Because you know how conservatives are always like, the Mexicans are taking our jobs.
Yeah, that's why I called this episode, they took our jobs. One reporter has expressed concern about his job after an AI-powered chatbot generates an article in seconds. And, I don't know what his argument here is. I'm curious to get into it because it's like, okay, first of all, what you wrote as a human being at this point in artificial intelligence technology, it should be better than whatever the AI produced.
Absolutely. And if it's not, then you should lose your job.
Exactly.
The other thing I don't understand is I think that there will always need to, not always, okay, but as it is right now, they will still need humans to do jobs to edit this stuff. So your job just got easier.
That's also a really good point. And now instead of being a writer, he would be an editor, right? But that's a curious thing itself. Is the argument has always been that as technology increases, it doesn't really eliminate jobs, it creates new jobs. And, I agree with that for the most part. But at a certain point, it does seem like we could reach a point in human society where all of the work could be done by robots and AI and whatever, and humans wouldn't necessarily have to do it. But the transitional period is of people losing their jobs at random because an AI can do it better or a robot can do it better and faster and more efficiently. That's going to be a really bumpy period.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of already been happening with the development of technology, like factories. Now there isn't a guy that needs to screw the lid on the toothpaste. There's a machine that does that. Or check out people at Walmart. This has slowly been happening, but those jobs were so low level that those people will be able to move up and do something that takes more of their effort and more of their creativity. And it's not, so I don't want to say mindless because it's not necessarily mindless, but
right.
They'll need a higher skill level to do something different.
They do, but it's important to point out that I think that when we say higher skill level and lower skill level, it's not like these people aren't going to have to go out and learn a new skill or get a college degree or pick up a trade or anything like that.
No, not necessarily.
The skill set to work in today's society is just hands down more complicated, more technical, and more skill required than a job from 100 years ago.
Well, luckily, we have the internet now.
Right.
People can go teach themselves everything they need to know about tech and get a tech job without having to go to college. Like Chris Wade laughed at me when I first met him because I was in college and I was like, I'm gonna go I'm doing IT stuff. And he was like, you can learn all that stuff on the internet. You should drop out of college. And I did.
Well,
I don't think every single person can do that, but
you have to be self-motivated to do that, and some people just aren't self-motivated. There's nothing wrong with that.
I didn't really want to go to college. I just kind of got bullied into it. So
well, that's a different issue.
Yeah.
However, I lost my train of thought on how I was going to circle back to the point at hand. But Henry Williams, a freelance writer from London, thinks that ChatGPT. What I was going to say was that the skills required, if you took a person from 100 years ago and you just put them in today's society and said, all right, this is our easiest job, right? It doesn't get easier than this. You're a Burger King cook. They're not going to be able to do it. They don't know what the buttons do. They don't know how any of it works. And it would be a nightmare trying to train this person to even understand the digital display and how to make the microwave work or just something simple like that. We're so used to it that we don't even think of that as being a skill. But yeah, the ability to turn on a microwave and make hot food is a skill.
I mean, there's an older lady that works at the place I used to work, and all she does is cleaning. And they've tried to teach her, like, why don't we teach you how to use the cash register? So sometimes you could take a day doing that. She cannot learn it. She cannot log in.
Yeah, that certainly is an issue. I mean, it certainly is a thing that happens. I don't know if it's really an issue. It's more like an age thing, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's I'm just saying she didn't grow up with it. She's not like a stupid person. It's just that she's like, I'd rather just, clean the floors, get my money that way.
And when we say that, people are going to have to learn new skills, that's what we mean. Society itself is going to create an entirely new set of skills that a person has to learn and just sort of innately learns by going through society and living one's life. I didn't have to learn how to use a computer. I just had one thrust upon me and I started using it, and eventually I figured it out.
Like, I think about the fact that I was like, I don't know, 7, making emails to log into Neopets, and it's like, that's something that some older people are just like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Neopets, I can see what they're coming from. And, that comes right back to the issue of someone from 100 years ago. It's so simple to us. Even an easier job than being a Burger King cook, like answering phones, being at a help desk, a tech support person behind a help desk. All you have to do, you don't even have to be able to speak English very well. All you have to do, you can sit in India and make $2 an hour reading a script and just clicking whether they say yes or no. You couldn't train someone from 100 years ago to do that because they don't have any of the skills necessary in order to make it work. So yes, we put that person out of his job because he assembled stuff on some production line and now a robot does that. But we lifted up all of society and created entirely new sets of skills for people to learn. These things happen slowly. It's not like everyone is going to wake up one day and there's this new robot. Now no one has to work and everyone's out of a job and everyone's going to starve to death or whatever. These things are slow, and there are new skills that we are constantly learning, constantly developing, and constantly mastering and going on to use in our, quote, jobs. Something like a fry cook didn't even exist as a job. Well, I'm sure it did, but not in the capacity it does today, because most people cook their own food at home, right? So Henry Williams is a freelance writer from London, and he thinks that ChatGPT, which I've tried to use, but it's backlogged, apparently. I didn't make the window to sign into it. Do you have to create an account to use this thing? I'm curious.
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
I did.
I was curious how it knew that I didn't have an account, because there was never any sign-up option or anything. I just went to it, and it was like, oh, we're full right now. I was like, well, how do you...
Wow. I didn't even realize I was like making a window or anything. I just signed up and started using it.
Yeah, I thought it would be, relatively, but it makes sense. All of the demand for ChatGPT right now is really popular. People are loving it, and I would like to be able to try it out. I've used a lot of these chatbots, but again, ChatGPT isn't really a chatbot. It's more like a writing generator. And for those who don't understand the difference, a chatbot will converse with you. ChatGPT, it will converse with you, but that's not really what it's for. It's for like generating articles and scripts and plays and whatever else you want to generate. One journalist, developed by tech company OpenAI, and there's nothing open about OpenAI. ChatGPT can complete many tasks in seconds, including writing essays, poems, and even complex code. And this is why it's being banned. I think the state of New York banned ChatGPT from its school systems, because they're like, well, a student can go here and say, generate me an article about, about the industrial era, and it'll do it.
But they have technology that they use to screen for plagiarism and, stuff like that. So I don't get why they couldn't use a similar thing to see if kids are using ChatGPT to generate.
Well, what if a kid
they probably do, but they've banned it and told students they can't use it.
To do their assignments, obviously.
But see, that's stupid. That's absurd. If the assignment can be done by a chatbot, then drop the assignment. It's not a skill a human needs.
When I took accounting,
I don't agree with that.
When I took accounting in high school, I really liked it because when I first heard about it, I thought it was gonna be a lot of math, but it was like, there's math, but our teacher was like, use a calculator. You're never going to get hired as an accountant, and they're going to want you doing math on scrap sheets of paper. So
and that's kind of my point here, where like, just because a calculator can do math for you doesn't mean you don't need to know how to do math. It's still important to know like 2 + 2. You know how much math a day at my job I have to do in my head? If I used a calculator, I would be so slow.
Definitely the building blocks should be there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a middle ground here where you do need to have the building blocks. It's not necessary to be able to do like 256 plus 140 in your head. 396, by the way.
Yeah. You probably should be able to do that, but
I can't do that fast.
Yeah, seriously, not everyone can.
Couldn't.
When I stop at a gas station, I go in and I get like a drink or whatever, and I say, give me the rest of 20 on pump 7 or whatever. I have seen cashiers just freeze in terror as they have to figure out what to give me in gas. And it's like, I can look at it and say, oh, it's $2.77. Okay, well then give me $17.23 in gas.
That used to be me until I worked at the last convenience store I worked at. I mean, I didn't have to do it in gas, but anyways, they just told me to use a calculator, so I would just sit there and use the calculator. And I knew it was probably,
double check. Yeah, it's
probably driving people crazy that I was using a calculator, but it would take longer for me to do it in my head. It's like, I'm not stupid. I could do it. It's just that it doesn't happen fast. It's like
not everyone can even do it. When some people, when we do this, they treat it like it's a superpower, and they're like, oh, I could never do that. It's like, dude, it's arithmetic. I learned this in the 2nd grade. Or maybe even the 1st. There's nothing complicated about this. It's taking 2 numbers and adding them together.
But there's something like innate that some people have with either doing it fast or not. And like, it's like my dad can do that. He can do fractions and stuff like that. And I can't do that in my head basically at all, but I definitely can't do it fast. But he's not good at like English. And then my mom is horrible at math, but great at like English. And neither one of them are dumb. They could figure it out because we have the internet and stuff. But, you know,
I'm just not sure that it's doing the world any good for a person to be able to, I mean, basic arithmetic, that may be too simple. That's like being able to write a sentence. Yes, a high school student, even after the existence of ChatGPT, needs to be able to write a complete sentence. And they probably need to be able to write a complete paragraph. And I don't know if they really need I don't know if they need the ability to write an essay or not. If it can be done, if every essay they'll ever need to write can be done by this AI, I don't know that I agree they need to have the ability to do it.
So I really don't like humans relying on technology so much. I think it's really important for people to be able to do most of these things.
I agree that I actually agree with that entirely. That's why none of this smart nonsense is anywhere in my house.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is just like, I don't think that everyone needs to be able to do everything. If a kid tried out math and it's just like, no, I hate this, I don't want to be doing this, they should be able to literally not know anything about math and just use calculators and stuff.
I agree with that, yeah.
But
I don't, because no one likes math at first.
Well,
right?
I'm not, okay, maybe not like none of it. Like, they should still have the building blocks that help them through society. I'm just saying they don't need to take calculus and even geometry and algebra if they're just like sure that they don't want to do that. And I mean, when you get older, you can still learn it if you want to.
You can, but I don't know, man. I hated math. And I didn't love math until I took college level calculus. And that was the point that I fell in love with math. And I realized how really elegant mathematics is, especially calculus and trigonometry, right? It's super nerdy, right?
Well, no, I was going to say that's the point when I started to hate math, is when I took calculus.
Man, that was when I fell in love with it, because just the elegance.
But just because
that was
they
when
might
I decided
like it doesn't make me think that we should make everyone learn them. Like, he could be spending all his time on, or more of his time on, the stuff he really likes and is really good at and wants to do for a living instead of math. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think everyone needs to learn the same thing.
And I think as far as education for children goes, I think it is important to let kids guide their own education. So if you have like a 4-year-old who's super into math, but he doesn't want to learn how to read, let him run with the math, and eventually he will get to a point in his math education where he's going to need to start to learn how to read. Things kind of just balance out like that. Maybe he won't be an author, you know, or maybe the kid that hates doing math, you know, they won't be a mathematician or an accountant, but I do think that kids eventually will round out to be able to do things good enough. And I do agree with you, Bonnie. Not everyone needs to be an expert in everything or even necessarily well-rounded in everything. I think things balance out enough for people to be able to do what they need to be able to do.
I don't know where I fall on the issue. Certainly, you don't need to be an expert in everything. I mean, that goes without saying. But there are many skills in which one needs a basic level of competence, I think. And as long as they have that competence, I don't care beyond that. And that competence is simple things. I'm setting a really low bar here of being able to write a complete sentence, being able to add 2 4-digit numbers together. And that's not overly complicated. And I don't care if you need to take out a pencil and a sheet of paper to do it, but I think it's important that a person be able to add 2 4-digit numbers together, and maybe even subtract and multiply and divide 4-digit numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But beyond that, I don't know that it's never done me any good to know college level calculus or trigonometry or even be able to calculate the radius or the area of a circle. Never been any use to me whatsoever. So it's probably not helpful to teach people that unless they're super into it. But,
or it's good, like, they're going to be an architect or whatever.
Well, see, that was how I ended up taking calculus. I hated math, right? But I was majoring in physics, and there's a lot of math in physics. It's like 98% calculus, and the rest is thinking about calculus. So there was a reason why I ended up switching to something else. But I hated every step that led up to it, and I would never have exposed myself to the subject voluntarily if it wasn't like tied to something else that I did want to learn. Like I wanted to learn physics and I wanted to master physics, and that required mastering the calculus. But the calculus I hated. If that makes any sense, I would never have been like, yes, I want to take college calculus, right? So that's one of the skills that I think.
But I think there's plenty of things I haven't tried that I would like if I tried. Like today, Nikki's fiance showed me how to drive stick. And it's like, I never really felt like I wanted to, but it's actually really fun. Like I felt like my little avatar body was like, yeah, a new thing, It's also a useful skill to have. Speaking of useful skills, I mean, you mentioned that now, I mean, you can't just drive off casually, but if there's an emergency, you could. I know how it works.
Yeah, and you were the only person here. You could drive the vehicle in order to handle that emergency.
Right.
And not everyone could. Other people would. One of our someone was going to borrow one of my cars from me, and I asked him, "Can you drive a stick shift?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course." I was like, "Okay, good," because my Eclipse isn't automatic, but I don't loan out my Eclipse. So he came to my house, and he gets in. He's like, "I don't know, nothing's happening when I turn the key. It's not cranking." I was like,
the clutch.
Yeah, I'm like, "Are you holding the clutch down?" He's like, "Which one's the clutch?"
I just don't understand why he would tell you he knew how to do it.
Because he thought that he did. It was classic Dunning-Kruger, where he thought that driving a manual or driving a stick shift, you know how some of these cars, they have the automatic thing, but you can switch it over to the right and plus and minus.
That's different. No.
My Eclipse has that, and as someone who can drive a stick, I hate that crap.
Maybe he just
thought that's totally different. That's not the same at all.
That's what he thought driving a stick was.
Maybe he just thought because it had the Prindle at all.
Oh, it could have been that.
Was the stick.
Man, the stick. You drive a stick and you can put it into drive, right?
Yeah.
But it's just Dunning-Kruger. He had no idea what was actually involved in it. And because of that, he didn't get to work that night because it's just absolutely insane that someone could reach adulthood and not know how to drive a stick, I guess.
I don't think that's insane, but I do think that people should learn how to. Yeah.
But then again, I mean, manual technology is kind of obsolete at this point. Mm-hmm. We don't really need it.
I have to go out of my way to find cars that are manual to buy.
You only buy manuals?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a choice, right? Yeah. I don't mind automatics. I do prefer a manual, though. Like, I have more fun driving a manual. It's more engaging. It requires me to pay more attention. I suspect, never having looked at any numbers on the subject, I suspect that people who drive manuals are less likely to be in an accident than people who drive automatics.
Why is that? Because I feel like I was just way more distracted. It was really fun, but like I went in front of the Hannaford and had to stop for all the passengers, and I was like, this is a lot to be thinking of. If I had my dog in the back jumping around and talking to somebody.
Well, eventually it becomes like second nature.
That's probably what it is.
But it's a level of second nature that requires more thought and more focus than just putting it in drive. Maybe I'm wrong. 603-283-6160. You can weigh in. Can you drive a stick shift? It's Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. President Joe Biden has announced the US will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. It comes after Germany said it too would send tanks to the country ahead of an anticipated Russian spring offensive. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US is sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in what President Joe Biden called further evidence of an enduring, unflagging commitment to Ukraine. It followed phone calls with several European leaders about the renewed united front among Western nations. But to prevent feared Russian retaliation, President Biden said the US supply of tanks should not be viewed as an offensive threat to Russia. The US has also promised to help train Ukrainian troops on how to operate and maintain the Abrams.
Russia says Germany's decision to send tanks to Ukraine is extremely dangerous, that it won't just hurt Russian soldiers, but Ukrainian civilians as well. Stuart Smith reports from Moscow.
Moscow also accused Berlin of escalating the conflict and of failing to recognise its historical responsibility to Russia for crimes committed by the Nazis in World War II. Berlin has agreed to send Leopard 2 tanks with appropriate ammunition, as well as train Ukrainian troops on how to use them. After the announcement, there was a warning from Russian diplomats at arms control talks in Vienna, who said that should any of the ammunition contain a uranium core, as some anti-armour tank projectiles do, that would be tantamount to detonating a dirty bomb if used in Ukraine, and Moscow would respond accordingly.
Personal, domestic or workplace disputes sparked half of the mass attacks in the United States from 2016 to 2020, according to research from the US Secret Service. Nearly all of the attacks were carried out by men, and a quarter were driven by conspiracy theories or hateful ideologies. The report aims to prevent violence by identifying warning signs and comes just days after a pair of mass shootings in California took the lives of 18 people. And the European Union has pledged £102 million for Nigeria and other countries battling an insurgency in the Lake Chad Basin. Tessem Akende reports.
They include Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. The money is for humanitarian aid to vulnerable communities impacted by nearly 13 years of conflict, displacement, and increasing food insecurity, whose situation continued to deteriorate. It is part of £182 million allocated by the EU for countries in the Lake Chad Basin, the Central African Republic, and the Sahel for this year. The United Nations says more than 24 million people in the Lake Chad Basin have been affected by conflict.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Apparently, the Holy Spirit is the tortilla. It would turn out 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join us at 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And for those who weren't listening last night, we ended up having quite a conversation about Christianity and religion in general, and especially the subject of the Trinity. And I ended up going home last night, and I mentioned on Facebook that we took calls on the subject all night long. It was a rare episode where we just had the one topic that we talked about all night. And I pointed out that despite many people calling in and attempting to explain the Trinity to us, what happened more often than not was that people just revealed that they had never given the subject any thought whatsoever. It was just one of those things they knew, they were sure they could explain it. But as soon as they started talking, they lost it all. And they were like, well, one guy was like, well, it's the definition of words and changes. And it was completely bizarre.
You see, it's just a burrito.
Right. And the very first comment I got was from a libertarian. He may or may not be listening to the show. I don't know if he listens to the show or not. I'm assuming not because he didn't call last night. But the very first comment was, well, a friend of mine once said to me, how can you have rice and beans and a tortilla and it still be a burrito, but you still have rice and beans and a tortilla? And damn, That pretty much sums up the idea of the Trinity. That explains it in a way that is neat and concise and sensible, but there's something about it that doesn't fit. And I don't care enough to put enough brain cells into figuring out why it doesn't work as an analogy.
They talk to each other. Like, they're not one body, soul, and spirit necessarily if they all talk to each other. Because, like, if you believe that humans are bodies, souls, and spirits, well, our body doesn't talk to our soul and talk to our spirit like we're all three people. Like, in Genesis, they talk to each other. That's what's strange about it to me. How is it? I don't think it could be a bean, cheese, tortilla, or whatever.
Well, the bean could talk to the cheese and could talk to the tortilla, right? They could all talk to each other, and together
kind of mingling, right?
But I was using it more like if that's the analogy for, oh, it's all one person with three different elements. What's weird to me is I don't understand how it's three different elements, but they can all separate and talk to each other because, like, your soul, I guess your soul could leave your body. I thought of that because
the idea
Jesus is the soul. I don't know. He left the gods and came here, but I guess your soul could leave the body and astral project.
Well, besides that, the idea is that you still have the beans. I mean, they are inside the tortilla, they are inside the burrito, but you still have the beans. They are still there, and they are still beans.
Yeah, you can open it up and dump it out, and they're beans.
Yeah, but it would not still be a burrito if you remove the beans.
I guess I don't know enough about the Holy Trinity to know why this even matters.
Well, because the reason I brought it up was because Christians argue that God is his own son. And
so that's what this is about?
That's ultimately what this is about.
No, that doesn't even make sense.
I know it doesn't make sense, but
do they really think that?
Yeah, Jesus is the Son of God, and Jesus is God. They
I didn't know they thought that.
They absolutely, every Christian out there believes it.
I think that they haven't thought that much about it because there's obviously some kind of history that isn't in the Bible. Because if God is, I could see it being a possibility, but it's just that we don't have the information. Like, if God existed and then Jesus existed after, because it doesn't say that Jesus has always existed, I don't think. I think it just says God has always existed. That would make him his son.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was forever, or whatever. And
God.
Jesus was the Word. It suggests that Jesus did exist eternally.
It doesn't say Jesus, because it's Genesis.
No, but Jesus does say, I am the Word, at one point. And then they go on in a different book to say that, I mean, none of this is clear and explicit, right?
I mean, yeah.
But that's the beginning of Earth. That's what I'm saying. That's the beginning of Earth. That doesn't mean that's the beginning of God. So lots of history could have happened before Earth was created in the Bible.
Well, if you ask a Christian, they'll say God had no beginning. God has always existed.
Yeah, but would Jesus have a beginning? That's what I'm saying. Jesus could have a beginning.
No, because Jesus is God. They are inseparable.
I don't think it says that necessarily.
Well, it doesn't say anything about hell, but that doesn't stop Christians from believing in hell, right? What the Bible actually says is irrelevant to most of their beliefs.
I mean, and a lot of this doesn't make sense. You know, a lot of the stories in the Bible, it's like, okay, well, that's impossible. That's impossible. That's impossible.
Yeah, let's talk about God having a son without, Jesus having a mother in the first place. He needed a woman to be born.
Yeah, that's impossible.
And that's the thing about the Trinity that makes the least sense to me is that there's no female in it, because in all the cultures before Christianity, like Egyptian, there was always Trinity, but it wasn't. They were three different beings. They weren't one, but there was always like a holy trinity. There's always a man, a woman, and a son. And that makes sense to me. But it doesn't make sense to me to be like a spirit, another spirit that is more male, and then a son. You know, I think that they purposely took the woman away for whatever reason.
Well, yeah, the patriarchy, you know what I mean?
But the reason I bring it up is because we have Major Payne on the line from Michigan, and he says he can clarify some of this. Major, you're on Free Talk Live.
Well, in Catholicism, they didn't take the woman away because Mary is held in very high regard.
Well, that's not part of the Trinity. She's the fourth.
Yeah, exactly. But you guys want to touch on the Trinity, and
is she considered God, or is she a lesser being?
She's just a human.
She is the intercessory between us and them. She's a mother. She's kind-hearted. She has feelings. And what the mother asks, the son will do. And what the son asks the father will do. It's kind of like a respectful family. Okay?
So Catholicism sort of...
I don't want to get into Mary. I want to get into the Trinity here.
Well, I mean, okay, but you brought her up. And I'm curious about it because I don't know much about Catholicism.
Guys were saying that women were disregarded. And that's BS right there. But the Trinity, there is a small spark of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit that exists in us all. And I'll ask you guys a question. Have you ever had that gut feeling where you knew something was wrong? Or the hair stood up on the back of your neck and you couldn't explain it? But that damn feeling was right. And if you hadn't run, you'd be in deep duty.
Yeah, your intuition.
Yeah, it's my soul and my true self and my, intuition also. And energy
that's
field.
The Holy Spirit, that's the Son and the Father.
But you can say that. It doesn't make it true.
The Holy Spirit lives in your gut. Listen, it took me 30 years to figure out what they meant by reading between the lines.
What is the Holy Spirit?
I'm giving you 30 more years of my aspects of this right now.
Sure.
If you'll bear with me and listen.
I'm trying to. What is the Holy Spirit?
The Holy Spirit lives in your gut. He's the one that makes you feel the primordial.
But what is he?
The Son, he lives in your heart, and he makes you feel love. And the Godhead lives between your ears. And when the hair stands up on the back of your neck, that's all three of them talking at once.
Okay, but what is the Holy Spirit?
He is your channel between the natural and the universal. That's about as best as I can explain it, hon.
I don't fully understand the concept of the Holy Spirit, so I understand the concept of a Father and a Son and all of that, but then they say the Holy Spirit, and Christians don't offer any sort of explanation about what this entity is. Okay, you mentioned that it's my connection. Does it have an existence independent of me? If there were no humans, no people in the universe, would the Holy Spirit still exist?
Well, I don't know. Maybe you'd be better off to understand it as your own angel. The little bit connecting you to this earth and to the universe.
I mean, we can say that, sure, but there's nothing but speculation and the assertion that such an entity exists.
Honey, our whole lives are stories.
Yeah. I'm not trying to convince you that there isn't a God. I'm just saying you saying that doesn't make it so, right?
Well, a skyscraper you can see and exist, right?
Yeah, generally.
Okay, that's just one story, built on another story, built on another story, built on another story, as are we.
Yeah. But that's a different kind of story, right? I mean, the stories, the mythologies and stuff like that are different.
I just can't imagine that a God that is everything that ever was and nothing would exist without his thought form creating it first would be able to be so summed up. Like, I just can't think of... I have more respect for God than Christians. That's all I have to say about it. It's just like, God isn't somebody who has talked to Moses and told us not to do and to do certain things. I think that God is so much more powerful and amazing than that, and I don't even think... I just think that it's like, honestly, like literally it makes me a little like sad for people. Like, I'm not trying to change your mind, but you're telling me what is, and I guess it makes me annoyed because you can't tell me what is. You can tell me what you believe without me getting annoyed.
I understand your feeling about God, and I actually do agree with you, but you got to look at let's say 100 cooks. They all want to change the recipe just a little bit. Just like telling a story around a campfire. After it gets whispered into the third ear, it's already changed.
Yes, but see, what the issue with a lot of religious people, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but the issue with a lot of religious people is that they say, this is the recipe, all of your other recipes are wrong. This is the recipe, I say so, and I'm right because the recipe says so.
And then they start wars over it.
You can see that aside, you can see the recipe right here. I'm clearly right because the recipe says so. But that doesn't make it right.
That all goes back to the popes during the Dark Ages and whatnot. And, there was a lot of books that were left out that probably should have been put in. And there was, it was all, they tried, as all politicians do, the church at that time was the political head.
Right, I understand all of that. I'm just coming back to Bonnie's point, which is essential that you can say a thing, you can tell us what you believe, but you can't tell us what is. That's all I was getting at. Like,
Well,
you can tell me your recipe all you want, but that doesn't convince me that your recipe is right.
We're right back to the 100 cooks. Who knows what's right?
Right. And thank you so much for the call tonight, Major. I mean, not a lot of Christians are willing to extend even that olive branch. I mean, they have an entire afterlife set up for people who don't believe exactly how they believe. And I think that's the most tragic part of Christianity.
Absolutely. And I think that is very much intentional because hell is not mentioned in the Bible. It's it's something that humans just made up to scare people into guilt people into believing in their religion, because for some reason in all of history before Christianity, it was cool for people to have other religions. As far as I know it, maybe I don't know enough about history, but it pretty much seemed like people just had their own religions, their own whatever, and it was cool. But for some reason, when Christianity and Catholicism came around, they felt the need to force their religion on every single people that they conquered, and they just needed every single person in the entire world to be a Christian.
Yeah.
Whereas before there were, so many different religions and so many different belief systems, and people seemed to just like that was just fine.
I don't know. There was definitely other religions that conquered others. Like Zoroastrianism was like the Persian religion, and that's what everybody believed in. And then whenever Muhammad had his dream and stuff, and people, or I don't know why I said dream, vision, whatever, and people started becoming Muslims, they tore that, like, you're not allowed to be Zoroastrianism anymore. We conquered this area. Not saying Muhammad himself. I don't know who, but you have to be a Muslim.
I suspect there are stories like that in all religions, even Buddhism and Hinduism. Yeah, it's a matter of control, right? Anytime one of these systems starts being built and it starts gaining traction, some immoral person goes, I can use this to control other people. Mm-hmm. And then they start, chopping heads off and persecuting people and all of those horrible things. But Bonnie, you mentioned how Christians don't seem to have much respect for their God. And that's a beautiful way of putting it. I absolutely love that. And it's the way that God is described by Christians in the Bible, what a sad, pathetic creature that God is. I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. The creator of the universe is jealous.
Doesn't add up.
And like the way it was always explained to me was like, it's not jealous like me and you feel, it's just that he deserves respect. But I just think of the creator of the universe as being like, that thing down there doesn't respect me. They'll figure it out. They're in the system that's set up for them to, figure it out. Something like that. More than like sitting around being all like, you need to believe in me. I just don't understand that. And it's not just the Old Testament stuff. It's like Jesus, he never claimed to be a god. He claimed to be the Son of God and stuff like that. He also said the kingdom of God is within you, to everyone listening to him. And I think his main message is really missed. I think that he was trying to tell people, he literally referenced a Old Testament like psalm, I think, that says, don't you know that ye are gods? And I just think that Jesus was trying to get a different message out, and people just basically watered it down to, oh, he's God. And
well, I certainly think that Jesus is more positive than what the average Christian actually says and does and believes. But there's a huge disconnect between the God Yahweh and Jesus himself. But let's keep going with the phones. We have Joe on the line from Maryland. Joe, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, hi, Aria. Hi, Bonnie, and hi, Nikki.
Hi.
What's on your mind tonight?
Okay. Well, let me tell you why I believe in God. In 2006, in September, I went to something called the Red Road Gathering. And I went to an Indian reservation. And they were talking about the road to God and everything like that. Well, they had a Reiki healer, and I was outside. It was pretty warm. And the Reiki healer had the hands over me and stuff like that, and she was moving the hands. Well, I felt the warmth of the sun in my face, and I went into a trance. And I had a vision. And the vision was, I'm in a clear room, and it expanded for eternity, and there was nothing. I saw a yellow ball at the top of my left-hand side. Suddenly, the yellow ball exploded. I saw these prisms, and they were purple, green, and yellow. And the light was emanating through them. Suddenly, I saw the universe being created. Stars, planets.
I'm letting
and
you
things
go
like
on,
that.
but I do want to point out that this entire story, you could have just said, I believe in God because I had a vision that there was a God.
I don't know. I'm pretty interested in it.
Yeah, that's why I'm letting him go on. I just wanted, there's a much shorter way to convey this story.
Okay, well, I saw the
And the
universe
details of
being
your vision,
created.
while fascinating, they're not going to persuade anyone but you.
Right. Well, that's why I believe in God, and that's why I told you. See, what you don't have, Arya, is faith.
Right.
And that's what...
That's the common argument, that you have to believe
faith.
in God in order to feel like there is a God, and that
just feels like blind trust.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
it's
like
not
the
even
way
that.
that-
I don't have to believe in my cell phone for it to be here. I can not believe it if I choose to not believe in it. I don't have to believe in this bottle. I don't have to believe in this pen. I don't have to believe in you, Joe, for you to exist.
Right.
Or to
Well, I
have
told you
evidence that
because
you exist.
I don't like the way that faith
tell
is.
you because you don't have faith.
I don't like the way that faith is
That's
usually
all.
defined by
Okay.
people. Faith isn't trust that something exists. I have always really struggled with this because my middle name is Faith, and I always wanted to know what it really meant. I always wanted to know what judgment really meant, and all these things that they take for granted in the Bible and in church. Like, they just say it and without really describing it. And I think now that faith is just like not closing yourself off to a possibility. Like,
Faith is gullibility.
I think that it's to have blind faith is it's the way it's always described. But blind faith is different than I'm open to a possibility. And if you don't have that at all, then you're closing yourself off to something. And that's what I think is more special about it than absolute trust that something is the way that somebody else told you it is. I think that opening your mind to possibilities that it doesn't have to have anything to do with God is a quality that is, I think, so beautiful in people, and most people don't have it. I'm not saying that Arya needs to have it in God, but like when I was a kid, I basically just treated everyone like I already knew everything about them. Everybody, I'm basically better than everyone. And I met this person, one of my best friends that I met in 8th grade, and he would just simply ask me whenever I was talking crap about other people or whatever, like, okay, I don't like her. He would just be like, you need to open your mind to the possibility that you would like her. Just little things like that all the time. And I think that is...
But that's
Go ahead, Joe.
That's what faith's all about. You learn things. And
But that's
then
not
you
what
have
faith
that
is all
feeling.
about. Faith is, I'm open to the possibility that there is a God, right? Being open to the possibility is not having faith. Yeah, I've been a believer through most of my life, and I'm still open to the possibility, especially the existence of a deist God. I absolutely could believe in a God, that some scientist out there that created this universe and devised all of these physical laws. I'm absolutely open to these possibilities.
Well, God isn't a scientist. He's an omnipotent being.
Yeah, see, that's where you lose me, man. That is pure insanity talking. Omnipotent means that God can do anything, right?
Exactly. Yup.
Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that God could? God could just will. Let me ask the damn question. Do you really believe that God could say, yes, that V8 that you're holding, Arya, I'm going to turn it into a Chihuahua? Do you truly believe that,
I mean,
that
science
God could
backs
do that?
Science backs that there is literally such thing as infinite.
Multitudes with two fishes and 5 loaves of bread. Jesus is the one person who changed the world the most.
The thing about it is, no one is going to convince someone else of something based on the fact that a book says it. And I'm not trying to convince Arya of that either. I don't believe that in the Christian God. I just really don't like the idea of somebody telling somebody to murder other people being God, or somebody who ruined somebody else's flock of pigs being God, and just not having any idea that property rights are a good thing. I just really don't like that idea. But faith...
Jesus didn't teach people to hurt anybody.
Well, Jesus was asked by some demons, can we go into the pigs instead of going to hell? And he said, yeah, sure. And the pigs went and ran off a cliff and destroyed an entire town's economy. And I don't like that.
She is correct. That story is in the Bible, Joe.
Right. They were possessed, and he, exorcised the demons from them.
And then the demon said, can we go into the pigs instead of going to hell? And he said, yeah, sure. Why would he do that? I think that's really something that a human would do. Maybe, I'm not saying he did it on purpose to be evil. He's probably didn't realize what was going to happen or something. But, I mean, if this...
Is he all-knowing then?
But
if Jesus is God?
Were possessed and Jesus saved their soul.
But I'm talking about ruining the pigs.
He killed a bunch of pigs in order to do it, though.
And not to say nothing about animal abuse.
Well, that
They
was
drowned.
God's wisdom.
What's wise about that? I mean, he could have just said, "No, you're a demon. Go to hell."
I don't doubt the word of Christ.
Well,
That's
see,
all.
that's the thing. That is not what faith is.
And I love animals.
Being like, I
I'm
have
the one
no
called
doubt
up
in
about,
anything because it's written
class
down in the
one.
Bible is not faith. Faith is, I'm going to look out into the world and find what is. I know that I have no way of saying, I could just take my life and say, there's no way to know what is, but I want to put into the work into finding out what is, and I believe that it's a possibility. So I'm going to keep looking. And it has nothing to do with the Bible, because if you look at it enough, you'll be like, okay, this is not what is, and let me continue. And I don't like the word faith being used as blind faith.
Yeah, the way you use faith, Joe, it really just reminds me of gullibility. From what you're telling me, faith is the ability to blindly believe what other human beings tell you.
Well, I'm not gullible, trust me. People called me a superior intellect.
Okay.
And I shouldn't believe in faith and stuff like that if I was that type of intellect. But I do. Jesus, like I said, he came onto this earth. He performed miracles. He changed this world more than anybody.
And that's what
Even
Christians
more than
say,
Hitler,
certainly.
Stalin, and Mao Zedong did. And like I
His
said,
followers have had an impact, sure. But I mean, we can't even prove whether or not the person such as Jesus Christ ever actually existed. But you can't use the actions of Christians. You can't use the actions of Christians, Joe, to prove the existence of their deity.
Talks about Jesus.
What?
Everybody talks about Jesus. You can't prove he existed, but you're talking about him.
That doesn't mean he existed, right?
Well, no, but there are stories about him.
We can talk about Harry Potter. That doesn't mean Harry Potter exists.
I don't know. I think that a person named Jesus did exist.
Didn't change the world.
Yeah, Harry Potter has had a profound impact on the world.
I just think that we missed Jesus's message, and it's honestly really sad.
Joe, thank you so much for the call tonight. I wish I could keep you around, but yeah, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling had a profound influence on the world. A lot of people are better people for having read the Harry Potter books. If that makes Jesus real, then it also makes Harry Potter real. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Meta says it is reinstating Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts after a 2-year ban. The pages were suspended after the former president's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2021, whipped into a frenzy over his lies about election fraud. Trump's Twitter account was restored in November. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Meta says it will unblock Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts in the coming weeks. This will once again give the former president direct access to hundreds of millions of his followers, just as he ramps up his 2024 bid for the White House. Trump's campaign had been petitioning Meta to lift the suspension, arguing it was a matter of free speech. Meta said it decided to reverse course because it believes the risk to public safety had significantly receded since the January 6 attack, but added it would put new guardrails in place to deter repeat offenses. Tony Waterman, Texas.
U.S. President Biden has announced the U.S. will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. It comes after Germany said it, too, would send tanks to the country ahead of an anticipated Russian spring offensive. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US is sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in what President Joe Biden called further evidence of an enduring, unflagging commitment to Ukraine. It followed phone calls with several European leaders about the renewed united front among Western nations. But to prevent feared Russian retaliation, President Biden said the US supply of tanks should not be viewed as an offensive threat to Russia. The US has also promised to help train Ukrainian troops on how to operate and maintain the Abrams. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Stocks fell across the board Wednesday following a disappointing forecast from Microsoft earlier in the week. The tech giant predicted slower growth in its cloud computing business. FSN's Sally Patterson has more in New York.
Microsoft shares fell by as much as 1.4% on Wednesday, but later rallied slightly after the tech giant reported its cloud services business slowed last quarter and was expected to slow further in the current quarter. Its results come after it laid off roughly 10,000 workers last week in anticipation of a revenue drop. The forecast weighed on the wider markets. The technology-heavy Nasdaq closed down 0.2%, the S&P closed down 0.02%, while the Dow was up just 0.03%. But shares in media company News Corp rose 5% following the news that Rupert Murdoch was scrapping plans to recombine the company with Fox Corp.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the Ukrainian perspective on the need for the US and Europe to reach agreement on the supply of battle tanks to Kyiv. It has become a major rankle in the transatlantic alliance that may finally be overcome, with reports that Germany and the US have struck a deal over the supply of the heavy armoured equipment to Ukraine, even though the White House has argued in recent days that its M1 Abrams tanks are too complex and powerful for the battlefield. Yulia Mendel is a former press secretary for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and says Ukraine needs tanks now.
Russia is preparing to have more mobilized people and have the escalation like in March or April, few months only. And we have very, very little short time to prepare for this. So we are begging for tanks. The Ukrainian General Staff said that we need at least 300 of tanks to defend our borders from Russia that can attack from north, from south, and from the east of the country where there are hot battles right now. And as you understand, actually to get Ukrainians trained for these Western tanks and to have logistics of the tanks to Ukraine, it all takes time. So we are begging for the political decision to be made right now so that we can get tanks as soon as possible.
Tomorrow, what's it like working alongside Ukraine's wartime leader? We'll hear more from his former press secretary. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Meta says it is reinstating Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts after a 2-year ban. President Biden announces that the U.S. will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. And stocks fall across the board following a disappointing forecast from Microsoft, which predicted a slowdown in its cloud computing business. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer.
Fans of the Tour de France will be disappointed to hear that the race has been put on hold for an indefinite amount of time, as many of the world's top cyclists are currently riding over to the creek to check out cool bugs. Our Chad Williams is live in Bergerac, France.
Thanks, Rachel. Roads that should be full of bikers are empty this afternoon. Right now, the riders were supposed to be here, making the climb up the legendary Mont Ventoux, but instead, they rode into the woods after German cyclist Andre Greipel heard that there were a bunch of stick bugs down at the creek, and then everybody wanted to go down there and throw rocks at them. That's when Dmitry Muravyev reportedly skinned his knee but didn't care, and Irish champion Nicholas Roach announced he saw this big weird frog with like an extra arm or something, but it was hard to tell because it hopped away too fast. Race officials have not put a time frame on when the event will pick up again.
People keep saying that this is going to delay the race, but if I know these boys like I think I do, they're going to find some awesome shortcut through someone's backyard.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to join us, weigh in with your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, the number is 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And we got sidetracked a bit with a bit of a discussion about religion, carrying on the conversation from last night that we had. And I've had a lot of people accuse me of being hostile to Christian callers. And I mean, maybe to an extent, but I don't think it's unreasonable and I don't think it's unjust. Like a lot of Christians will call in and they want to tell me what is. You know, it's kind of screwed up when you think about it to just go up to another human being in any context and say, no, you're wrong and this is what's up. I know the mysteries of the universe and I'm going to share them with you right now.
I also think it's a naive.
It is.
These are things that we don't have concrete proof of. Like you kind of mentioned in the last segment, this cell phone, I'm holding, I can see it. This is more believable than, I have evidence for this.
The main thing is, I think that the purpose of the universe is to try to figure these things out yourself and for humanity to do that. And I think Christianity, Islam, all these big religions were created just to keep people from doing that. These people aren't looking into any of the stuff I'm looking into.
Yeah, it's a cop-out.
They're able to just be like, oh, somebody figured that out for me. Let me sit on my couch and eat Cheetos all day.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's closing your mind off to all of these possibilities.
And it is true that, we're a call-in show. I'm inviting people to call in and, maybe they don't want to face hostility and then, that's fine. But then don't begin the conversation with, well, you're wrong and you just need faith or something like that. That's going to set up an antagonistic relationship because I'm not a Christian. And I know that Christians out there, they can't even understand this possibility, but I don't believe what you believe. And your belief tells you that I'm going to be tortured for all eternity because I don't believe what you believe. That's the actual ground zero of where this conversation starts. You can't just say, well, I believe in God and Jesus loves you, but because that's not actually the beginning. The beginning of this is I'm a sinner, I deserve eternal damnation, and I'm going to get it if I don't worship Jesus.
Well, and I think that's why people are so preachy about it. Because, you'll have your grandma that's like, I need to save your soul because I love you and I don't want you to be damned for the rest of eternity if you're a non-believer. And it's manipulative.
It is, and it's evil.
It's even evil for those people. Like, I feel sad for those people who think that all of their grandkids who don't believe exactly what they believe are going to hell. And I mean, ultimately it is their fault too, but they were also tricked.
Yeah. So I had a close friend. I think we were probably in high school at this point, and she was, she's very Christian, involved in the church, whatever. And one of her family members was dying and didn't believe in God. And she came to me distraught because her grandmother or whoever it was on their deathbed. And she was convinced that they were going to hell because they weren't a believer. And it was just so sad. And
yeah, isn't that absolutely horrifying?
It is. It's horrific. And at this point, in high school, you're like pretty much a child, but like you're definitely not quite an adult yet. And it just felt so sad to me that this religion and this, philosophy is manipulating people in this way where they're going through this torment of thinking that themselves. I remember when I first, kind of escaped Christianity, Catholicism, whatever, there was so much back and forth because I was so afraid. I'm like, well, I don't really believe in this. And then whenever I would think that, no, I'm just kidding. I changed my mind. I believe. Because I was terrified because I was taught my whole life and conditioned my whole life, I'm going to go to hell. And I was so afraid of that punishment that anytime I would try to open my mind up to something different, I would have to take it back because of that fear. And that held me back for a really long time until I just stopped caring and couldn't deny it any longer, that this is just not real.
It's just so sad that the pursuit of truth would even have that kind of an element thrown into, because the same thing happened to me. Like when I started looking into things to see, this was my thought process. I was like, I'm going to look into this and I'm going to be able to refute it all and I'll still be a Christian. And that didn't happen. I'll look into all the reasons that people are atheists and I'll be able to refute it all and I'll still remain a Christian. But if I don't do that, then I can't say I didn't do my due diligence. And then once I started realizing, it was the same thing. It was like that back and forth. I'd be like, oh my God, now I'm walking in the dark alone and I have to, if I don't think about Jesus, a demon's going to pop out. Seriously, that's sad that fear is even thrown into the mix when somebody is just trying to find out what is the truth.
What's interesting to me about the subject of the fear and the threat of hell is that, we had a caller last night who kept saying, well, it's not my place to judge or whatever. And that's a cop-out. That is the ultimate cop-out. You're worshiping a God that you think is going to send me to hell for all eternity. My basic question to these Christians, to anyone out there who thinks I'm going to hell, do you think that's right? Do you think that's morally justified? Do you think God is right to send me to hell? And almost universally, their answer will be, well, it's not my place to judge. I'm not the one sending you to hell. No. But you're condoning it. You're worshiping this. I could not worship a creature that was so evil that it would torture someone at all, much less for all eternity.
Well, and does it make sense that God is all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good? Can those three things exist all at once with the stories in the Bible?
Well, it's obvious that none of those things can exist even independently, much less together, and much less...
look around at the world.
One of the simplest questions, one of the silliest questions is, can Jesus microwave a burrito so hot that he cannot eat it? And it's a silly question, right? But think about it. If God can do anything, then he can microwave a burrito to infinite temperatures, but he can also eat a burrito no matter how hot it is. But if he can eat a burrito no matter how hot it is, then he can't microwave it too hot. So, so omnipotence by itself is a logical fallacy. And when you start throwing in omnipresence, being everywhere at once, and omniscience and knowing everything, and somehow you want to throw in free will, that despite God being all-powerful, not very powerful, all-powerful and all-knowing, not really smart, already knows what I'm going to do and has a plan, which means God knows everything I'm ever going to do, and he has a plan built around me doing everything I'm going to do. I cannot deviate from that plan.
Yeah,
how could I possibly have free will? I can't. I'm a pawn in God's game. But none of these contradictions matter ultimately to the Christian. They just go, well, God's a mystery. No, there's nothing mysterious about it. It's just you're spewing nonsense.
For me, it ends right there.
Yeah.
That's where it ends.
Yeah.
So how do we go past that? How do we move forward?
I don't think we can.
No, I don't think so.
And the infinite regress is one of the biggest arguments that Christians have in their toolkit. Like, okay, the universe came from somewhere, so to speak, and then God created the universe, so where did God come from? Well, there's some other God, and they just terminate and say, well, God created the universe and God has always existed. And that's fine. However, it's unnecessary. We don't have to go that far because we know that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms. The universe is a collection of matter and energy. The universe cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms. So the universe wasn't created by God, as far as I can tell. The universe has always existed. and must have always existed because matter can't be created or destroyed.
I mean, what if the universe is God?
That's what I was going to say. I think me and Ian would believe basically that just means that the universe is God. And that's why I say when people try to say that God is Jesus, is Yahweh, it's more like disrespectful to God. It's because it's so much more complicated and beautiful and amazing than that. Like I'm reading a book and I talk about it all the time because it's been taking me like a year to read it because it's really long, called The Secret Life of Plants. And just the stuff I didn't know about plants until I read this book, is so freaking complex and beautiful, and all the things that go into it have something to do with like every part of the universe. Like the moon phase, if a moon phase isn't in the right phase, sometimes seeds won't sprout because they communicate with the moon, and all these things coming at us, all this stuff coming at us from the sky at all times. I don't know what to call it right now. Can't think of what those words.
The universe is certainly more complex than Christianity suggests. And I don't know if I agree or disagree with the statement that the universe is God. I mean, the universe certainly exists, and it's full of all sorts of wonder and things that I cannot comprehend and don't even have the capacity to comprehend. And we can call that whatever we want.
And I'm not saying it is God. I'm just saying it is. We know that.
Yes, the universe
it's true.
is.
One thing I love about nature is just like when we were going to court all the time for Ian's trial, it's like I had to look at all this crap, and they have all these symbols in the church that I know are lies. So I'm looking at it, and I have to constantly tell myself that's a lie, because they have these horrible symbols all in this church called the courthouse. And whenever we'd be driving there and I'd be looking out the window at the beautiful trees and stuff we were passing, I would just say to myself, like, wow, this is truth. And I'm tired of having to sit in this courthouse of a bunch of crap lies. And what was I trying to say about that? Basically, we know that it is, and it's so beautiful beyond something we could possibly imagine. God doesn't have to be a person sitting somewhere, you know?
Excellently said. Let's go to the phones. Caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
Hey, this is Mark. Mark Watson, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey, I just wanted to call in. You got a great topic, and I emailed Ian last night about it, and I just wanted to give a couple of thoughts.
Absolutely.
You brought up a lot of questions, and let me just say it first. I'm not going to be able to answer all your questions. So
that's a beautiful sentiment. Just being able to say, I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
So here's what I want to suggest. What is the question that bothers almost every libertarian?
Who would build the roads?
Exactly.
Oh, that's actually the question? I thought Bonnie was making a joke.
I was.
Well done.
No, she's absolutely correct.
That doesn't bother me. I'm not worried about who's going to build the roads, but go ahead.
Okay, the reason I bring that up is because there are questions that keep coming up from people who are not libertarian, who ought to know because there have been decades and decades of writing to answer these questions by people who are libertarian who know the answers.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Have information. So what I'm saying is, it's kind of not fair to a libertarian to be able to have to give all the answers that have already been written down and provided when someone asks a stupid question because it's already been answered. So what I'm going to say to you is, libertarianism is a system of belief. Not faith, but belief. There is a certain amount of understanding that has to happen in the human mind to understand libertarianism.
Yeah, and the belief
that's why you don't need belief.
You do need belief. You need the belief that it's wrong to commit aggression against other people, and you need the belief that leads to a better society. But that is just a
belief. But that's more of an understanding.
But it could be wrong. We don't know.
I think that I understand that's true fact that it's better when people are not.
But it's not a
using
true fact.
coercion against each other. It is a true fact.
Well, not everybody's going to believe that.
It doesn't matter if other people believe something that's true.
What metric are you using to determine what is and isn't better?
Because
that's what determines whether or not it's accurate.
Because there's no situation where people using force against each other is better. When has there ever been? Well, somebody would have to prove that first.
Well, that's your opinion, right?
It's not an opinion.
Well,
it's
better
not
in
my
what way?
opinion
Better
that I
in
need
what
to breathe.
way?
For every aspect.
Better for who?
You already know the answer of these things.
If a person enjoys using violence against others, then it's better for them if they use violence against others.
Well, I don't think it is.
But it is.
But
because
I don't think it really
brings
is.
them joy.
it doesn't necessarily bring them joy, because people obviously don't understand what joy even is if they don't understand how much better it could be if their idea of joy is hurting other people.
But you can't just say that doesn't really bring you joy. If you have a psychopath who finds joy in hurting other people...
Psychopaths don't have joy.
Okay, if you have an immoral person who finds joy in hurting other people, you can't say that he doesn't find joy in hurting other people, because he does.
I just haven't found somebody that actually exists in them. Like, everybody that's like a horrible person just hasn't realized a better way to live.
Or maybe they believe they have.
I also just feel like that's your opinion,
Beliefs are stupid, and I don't think that there's such thing as, or I don't think that it's right to call libertarianism a system of beliefs. We understand that it would be better for everyone if people didn't use coercion, because more prosperity in the world. There's no system that would make...
But more prosperity in the world doesn't necessarily mean it's better. That's just the metric that you're using to determine what is and isn't better. Prosperity may ultimately be a bad thing. Maybe it would be better if humans lived like animals. Maybe the universe would be better.
Animals don't not live in prosperity, and animals also live,
That's what I'm saying. Prosperity doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. It may be a bad thing.
I'm saying animals don't not live in prosperity. Animals have everything they need out in the wild.
Well, some of them do. Some of them starve. Animals starve all the time.
Can I call time out for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate that. Believe me, I know the conversation can go all different directions. But let me say that.
Can I just say one thing before? This is what I was trying to get to, because we got really sidetracked. But here's one thing I just have to throw out there before you make this statement: is Christianity isn't the same as libertarianism, because Christianity isn't something that someone sat around and thought, there's no better way to live life. It's just something somebody was told, this is the way it is. So that's a belief system.
Well, yeah, there are many doctrines and things, but I'm going to suggest something else, okay? Because we, as a libertarian and as an anarchist that I believe that I am, I come at the Bible and my faith from a voluntary perspective. So the reason why I do that is because I look at the scripture that talks about, say, in the Ten Commandments. People don't read the Ten Commandments. They think they do, but they really don't. Like there's a scripture just prior to the Ten Commandments, which explains why the Ten Commandments are being given. And the people were rescued out of Egypt, which was a government that was enslaving them. And so God was telling them, hey, don't be enslaved anymore. It said, you shall have no other gods before me. Why did it say that? Because God is not of the world. So all the humans on the earth do not have the right to enslave each other.
Okay. Yeah. Do you really want to get into the subject of God condoning slavery? Because I can pull up countless Bible verses where God explicitly condones slavery. Like where he straight up says it's okay for you to buy slaves.
Here's how to treat your slaves. Here's how to...
Those Bible verses exist. And you can't say that... And the reason why God said you can't have any other gods before me, it's explicitly stated in the Ten Commandments. Because I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. That's the reason.
And you look at commandment, in the commandment, it basically says you'll have no other gods before me. Why does it say that?
Because I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God.
No, listen.
No, I'm telling you the verse.
On the earth, no other human on the earth has the right to rule you. And you.
What does that have to do with God being before them?
The fact that can't possibly it being considering Moses was mad that they were breaking the commandments already when he got there, when they were worshiping Baal or whatever, the
calf,
the golden calf.
Well, he was sent to get the commandments, and when he came back, it was all hell breaking loose. But okay, things are not perfect. But this is my point. So things are not perfect today, and things are not perfect then. But what I'm trying to get across is when someone says, well, God condones slavery, what you're really missing is, no, he really doesn't. So when the Bible talks about you shall have...
Go ahead while I Google the actual Bible for you.
No, what I'm telling you is God is actually saying no human has the right to be the president of the United States, a congressman, a senator, a prime minister, a lord, a king.
Then why did God...
only his nation.
Why did God choose people to become the judges in the Old Testament, 50 years later? The judges and the priests and...
Do you want me to go past Ephesians 6, verses 5 through 8, where Paul states, slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling and sincerity of heart as to Christ? Do I need to go further, or to Colossians, or Timothy, or Titus, or even to the Old Testament?
What I'm talking about,
like Leviticus?
I'm trying to get to a point.
No, what you're saying is things that are you're calling and telling us that you're a Christian, and then you're explicitly ignoring things that are literally stated in the Bible, and you're putting your own weird little spin on it, where somehow God's saying, I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, you shouldn't worship anyone else, is somehow him saying, you shouldn't have any kings, by the way, but here's some kings and here's some judges for you, which happened just...
No, you're not letting me get a word in edgewise. What I'm saying is, all that came in 1 Samuel 8. 1 Samuel 8 was, hey, we don't like the judges. The judges were there to handle civil matters between people. They were not there to lord over people. Somebody would have a problem with somebody else, and somebody had to arbitrate that problem, that resolution. That was not somebody trying to lord over somebody. That was somebody trying to sort out problems between people.
Well, what about when God said that David was a man after his own heart and made him be king?
So what happened was, in 1 Samuel 8, they demanded a king. Now, what if you read the chapter? It says
no. Let's focus on that. They demanded something from God, and God bowed and gave in to them. Do you realize what a nonsensical thing you just said?
Especially if it's something so evil as like a monarchy. Like I can't imagine a god.
So what happened, Bonnie's right. There were judges in the land, and those judges were not perfect judges. And so the people were dissatisfied with them, and they demanded an earthly king. So what is that demand? That demand was a breaking of the first commandment, which you shall have no other gods before me. In fact, it explicitly says that in 1 Samuel 8. So God relents, tells them that...
So despite having ordered them not to have any other gods before them, God decides to allow them to have a god before them? Because you're muddying the word God so much that you're basically saying that a king is God. And I don't agree with that from the beginning, but even if we allow that, then we're buying into this idea that the jealous God, gave in to these demands and gave these people a different God to worship rather than himself.
No, what he was saying was he doesn't want anyone to let anyone rule over them. In other words, if you're a Christian, you should not seek after a president.
So how did the Jews get God? How did they get God to do something that he didn't want to do? Because that's impressive.
So what it was a sin, and they were breaking God's law. And
No. You said they got God to do it. They got God to do what he didn't want to do, which was to give them a king. So I need to know, man, how did they convince the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe to do something that the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe did not want to do? Is it a magic ring? Is it some Latin phrase?
People have the right to choose to believe or not. Those people broke the commandment by their own free will, and God said, okay, here's what's going to happen with the kings in the land. He said, you're going to get it good and hard because this is how they treat you. And the reason why I'm mentioning that to you is because in verse 2 in Exodus, it says, I brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He had already taken them out of slavery.
Yeah, man, you're putting weird spins on stuff. Like Leviticus 25 here, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you.
Well, it's just that
you may buy slaves.
The chosen people weren't supposed to be slaves. They could have slaves and treat them badly.
Right, but they could buy slaves. They were explicitly told they could have slaves. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
Do you know the difference between erudite and pedantic? If you do, you're probably pedantic. But seriously, a surprising number of erudite people mispronounce erudite, which has 3 syllables, not 4. Say erudite, not erudite. Because you are judged by how you speak, you want to avoid common misstatements, especially if you're a job seeker. For instance, do you know the difference between imply and infer? Only a speaker can imply. Only a listener can infer. And when you say you'll be out of pocket, do you mean out of touch? Out of pocket means you're on your own dime, not yet reimbursed. And if anyone ever asks, why do you always answer a question with a question? You should reply, do I do that? Just kidding. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Meta says it is reinstating Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts after a 2-year ban. The pages were suspended after the former president's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2021, whipped into a frenzy over his lies about election fraud. Trump's Twitter account was restored in November. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Meta says it will unblock Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts in the coming weeks. This will once again give the former president direct access to hundreds of millions of his followers, just as he ramps up his 2024 bid for the White House. Trump's campaign had been petitioning Meta to lift the suspension, arguing it was a matter of free speech. Meta said it decided to reverse course because it believes the risk to public safety had significantly receded since the January 6 attack, but added it would put new guardrails in place to deter repeat offenses. Tony Waterman, Texas.
U.S. President Biden has announced the U.S. will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. It comes after Germany said it, too, would send tanks to the country ahead of an anticipated Russian spring offensive. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The U.S. is sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in what President Joe Biden called further evidence of an enduring, unflagging commitment to Ukraine. It followed phone calls with several European leaders about the renewed united front among Western nations. But to prevent a feared Russian retaliation, President Biden said the U.S. supply of tanks should not be viewed as an offensive threat to Russia. The U.S. has also promised to help train Ukrainian troops on how to operate and maintain the Abrams. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Stocks fell across the board Wednesday following a disappointing forecast from Microsoft earlier in the week. The tech giant predicted slower growth in its cloud computing business. FSN's Sally Patterson has more in New York.
Microsoft shares fell by as much as 1.4% on Wednesday, but later rallied slightly after the tech giant reported its cloud services business slowed last quarter and was expected to slow further in the current quarter. Its results come after it laid off roughly 10,000 workers last week in anticipation of a revenue drop. The forecast weighed on the wider markets. The technology-heavy Nasdaq closed down 0.2%, the S&P closed down 0.02%, while the Dow was up just 0.03%. But shares in media company News Corp rose 5% following the news that Rupert Murdoch was scrapping plans to recombine the company with Fox Corp.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and as always, you can join us. You can weigh in with your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We in the studio tonight. It's Aria,
Nikki, and Bonnie.
And again, we do welcome all callers, especially Christians. 603-283-6160. But
Wait,
need to know.
Especially, I don't know about that.
Well, for me, yeah, especially. I don't want to hear from other atheists or Satanists
about
out there.
this topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. But I definitely want to hear from Christians, but it's important for you to understand that I know the Bible really, really well. And Bonnie knows the Bible really, really well.
I don't.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know whether Nikki does or not, but
I know it pretty well. There's huge swaths I've never looked into.
Certainly. But that's true for me as well.
I specifically spent years of my life as a kid studying Exodus and Genesis.
But see, the average Christian hasn't. The average Christian hasn't read the Bible, may not even have a Bible.
Well, you don't have to because you just go to church and those people tell you about it.
That's absolutely true. And that's why the Catholic Church, or were they the Catholic Church, I guess? I don't know if they were. The Church of England, at the very least, resisted at the time the idea of translating the Bible into English. People were being put to death for translating the Bible out of Latin into English because that allowed it to be accessible to the common person.
We can't have that.
Yeah, no longer did you have to rely on the priest to tell you what the Bible said. You could go and read it yourself, and they did not like that one bit. That's why they wanted to keep it in Latin for such a long period of time.
That's not sketchy at all.
No, it's always been a matter of control. But most Christians, they don't know what's in the Bible. Their theology in their heads is some confusing mess of Adam and Eve and some snake and Jesus and some bearded dude living in the sky, and somehow he's magical, and that's pretty much the extent of what you know about it for most Christians. And I don't know if this is true of any of the callers that we had, but if you're going to call the show to talk about this with us, you should know what the Bible says. And to the credit of the last caller, he did seem to know what the Bible said. He did have Bible verses that he could point to readily and quickly that he knew about. However,
but the thing is, if he probably knew about those other ones, but he has just some kind of answer. And another topic that we didn't get into with him, but he kind of glossed over it, was he was saying, like, listen, it's not fair to make a libertarian explain every single time to everyone why somebody else can build the roads. It's a simple question, but like it's been answered before. The thing about it having been answered before by Christians on these other things is these aren't concrete topics. Like, who will build the road is a concrete answer. The answer is businesses who already build the roads. There just wouldn't need to be a third-party person. And I don't mind answering that again and again for the rest of eternity as people ask me that. But Christians want to be like, ugh, we already answered how God is 3 in 1. No, you didn't. Humans can't answer that. I mean, not only is it not explained in the Bible, but you're not going to tell me that you already explained that when you haven't, like, met God personally, done anything to make me believe that you have done something greater than any other human being has claimed to do.
Absolutely. And, you know, I wish more understood that. But let's keep going with the phones. We have Chuck on the line from Washington. Chuck, you're on Free Talk Live.
I really liked it when y'all rap on these Bible things because it makes me think about when I was a kid and everything like that. And so
they seem to be popular episodes, but maybe that's because I'm holding my tongue so much about what I really think about Christianity, and for the most part, a lot of Christians.
Well, and that's why I think that, to go back to what you had said in previous shows, that's why I think Christianity is losing right now. They're losing ground because they can't explain these things that they say. The Trinity, and some of the magic show with the fish and the bread and the wine and so on and so forth. So the last caller is a perfect example, and I don't want to attack anybody. I don't want to be on that kind of level here in my pursuit of spiritual understanding here, because this is really why I'm calling. It's for me. This person that was talking is a Bible verse builder, okay? So what they do is they get you entangled into a conversation about, they get you entangled in fellowship, and then what they do is they point out a bunch of different Bible verses that they know by heart that supports this whole theory that they're trying to throw out there, which doesn't make any sense to anybody else. But somehow you're going to, Google what he was talking about, Samuel, yada, 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 and in conjunction with Exodus, and then followed by, something that Jesus said on the cross. To support his whole, he's probably a youth pastor, by the way. Did you ever pick up on that? I did. Or somebody that was in that kind of...
I did not, and I don't want to assume that about him. He seemed to me like just a normal Christian that I would have known in the South.
Oh, brother, I tell you, here's what I know. I know Psalms 23. That's all I'm going to say. And that's...
Did either of you get the impression that he was like a youth minister?
I mean,
or
he didn't
anything?
mention it.
No,
so.
but I think I know what this caller means. He's trying to say, like, oh, he's already got an explanation for, like, somebody who asks a question. He is
like teenagers questioning things.
Right, and he's going to talk to them like, this has already been answered. Here's the answer. You know, like, that's definitely happened to me.
So when we ask him who will build the roads, he thinks he's the guy with the answers. When we ask a Christian, these questions, basically, who will build the roads, but a Christian version of that, he's like, I've got the answer that's already been answered.
Yep.
He's that guy.
Jesus told us, give to Caesar what is Caesar. So that means what? To who? When
it depends on who you ask. I've heard at least 2 different interpretations of that verse, and both of them are plausible, right?
And about him being a Bible verse builder, like you're saying, I think the most important thing about what the last caller was doing was he was telling us something that was in the Bible, then adding in a little of his own interpretation. Like
absolutely,
you got to put that on Front Street. You got to say, like, and this is what I think of like that, and that's what I believe. That's what. Then it's legitimate. But if you're telling me like, so God said, "Have no gods before me," and that's because He wanted them to not have slavery, then you got to be able to explain that because that part's not in the Bible.
Even more cutting, I don't really care what the Bible says. I mean, if you want to quote Bible verses to me about your theology, that's fine. But first, we have to establish your Bible as a credible source. And it has never been demonstrated to be a credible source.
I'm sorry to cut in here, but as far as slavery is concerned, the Bible has been one of the pillars in supporting American slavery. I mean, that was quoted time in and time out to keep it in place.
Do you mean during prior to the Civil War, when the United States and its colony states were arguing about slavery and whether or not? I mean, I haven't. You keep saying absolutely, but I haven't even finished the statement.
They were using scripture to keep that in place.
Right. I'm trying to elaborate and explain what they were trying to keep in place, which was the institution of slavery. Americans were arguing about it. Some were saying it was wrong. Some people were saying it was moral. And the Christians in the United States were saying, no, look, slavery is fine. God is okay with slavery. And here's the Bible verses to prove it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Christians don't realize that.
Well, the people, I think, again, I think that there's some people out there that look at Christianity as fire insurance. They'd rather believe in this because who wants to go to hell? I mean, who really wants that?
Well, no one. That's the point of hell, right? But
and that's what makes me so sad about all of this. It's like I don't like thinking about my family members who only believe in this stuff because they're afraid.
Yeah, like why? And that's the thing for me. Why do people need to be threatened to believe? It's just a major red flag for me because none of that is really even mentioned in the Bible. They're just spelling out all these things and elaborating on the text and creating their own story to manipulate people.
It's caused me to be slightly deceitful with my grandmother, and I don't like that. Like, she knew I was an atheist prior to, she's known that for the last, 15 years of my life, however, but she's always held out hope that I was going to become a Christian or whatever. Now I've moved to New Hampshire, and we don't talk, but she occasionally texts me. So she asked me, have you found a church? And I was like, well, I went to there was a church nearby that I went to recently, which is true, but I'm avoiding answering the question and saying, no, I don't believe in God. I'm not wasting my time with this nonsense because she's like, 95 years old or
what's
something?
What's the point?
Yeah,
and you don't want her just worrying like, oh, Arya's going to go to hell.
But I shouldn't have to be deceitful like that. And I'm not lying to her. I mean, if she would ask me point blank, do you believe in God or whatever, I would answer the question. But I'm meticulously avoiding the question because I don't want her to be afraid for my everlasting soul. And that religion has caused her to be that way is absolutely disgusting. That this 90-year-old woman should never live in fear that one of her grandchildren is going to be tortured for all eternity by a God that supposedly loves them.
Have you ever, has anybody ever heard of Father Harold Camping?
No.
Okay, so
is he the guy who's always predicting the end of the world?
Yeah.
All right, then I knew the name was familiar.
Okay, so he believed his version of Christianity was the spiritually dead if you don't go to hell, because that's only something that basically, this is what I gathered from many hours of really trying to understand what he was saying, is basically what he can take scripture and say that once you're dead, you're dead. You don't go to hell. It's just dead. It's you're spiritually, you're no longer connected with the Lord Jesus and God and whatever. You're it's basically nothing.
Yeah, that sort of fits with my understanding of what the Bible says about the afterlife. As I understand it, and it's been a really long time since I looked into it, it references two things that could be said to be hell. The first is the bottomless pit. The second is the lake of fire. The lake of fire is where souls are thrown to be destroyed. The non-believers are destroyed there. It's like the Mount Doom, and only there can souls be unmade or whatever, right?
If it says that they're there to be destroyed, where do people get the idea that you just stand in the fire and your body can't be burned and you get tortured for eternity?
From Paradise Lost and Milton and Dante's Inferno and other fan fiction of the Bible.
Well, and
that's realistic. Yeah, that's what informs most Christian theology is Paradise Lost.
I mean, when I was in 8 years old, my friend, her parents gave me this children's Bible thing, and it elaborated heavily on what would happen in hell. A children's book talking about things that fly around and zap you, and the way you'll be tortured for all of eternity if you don't believe in God. This is what they're feeding to children.
Yeah, that's horrifying. And the bottomless pit mentioned, I think it's only mentioned in the book of Revelation, and it's reserved for Lucifer. All of that goes out, Lucifer is going to be thrown into the bottomless pit.
So if this isn't even really mentioned in the Bible, just maybe briefly, vaguely, then why are we, creating these books of this is an easy to digest version of scripture for children where we're talking about how we're going to torture them? It's just...
Yeah, thank you so much for the call tonight, Chuck. And I don't get it either, especially for children, because this is how they rope you in, right? They don't.
That's why they do it. They have to start you young with the fear.
But see, they don't do the fear that early. I was exposed to this. Bonnie, you were exposed to this, and I'm sure you were too as well. But they never talked about the threat of hell when I was 5 years old. They talked about sin and how God wanted me to be a good person, all that stuff. But it was all about how Jesus loves you.
Yeah, that's how they start.
Jesus loves the little children. He loves you so much that he could just explode in happiness. That's how they start you.
In church, yes.
He's watching over you from the clouds, and he loves you, and he's taking care of you. And they paint this warm, beautiful picture. The hell, that doesn't come until later.
See, my mom is a really different Christian. She doesn't have some kind of sect she belongs to. She would just look for the type of people that she vibed with wherever we went. And from a very young age, my mom was like, demons will come into your room at night if you're doing these bad things. I don't want to scare you, but if you lie, then demons will come into your body.
I'm sorry, but that is funny. I don't want to scare you, but
she would always say
demons are coming for you.
She would always want to say that she didn't want to put a spirit of fear into me, but she wanted me to understand this stuff. And it was just I'm not trying to be mean to my mom. It's just that I really think that is mind control.
And Nikki,
it's traumatizing.
Yeah.
That is. Nikki, you said they started with the fear early in you, with this pamphlet?
Yeah, it was a book. It was a children's book. And by the way, my parents were never very religious. At this point, I think I was 7, 8 years old. We had already stopped going to church, so my parents just weren't into it. They were like, this is a waste of time, whatever, we don't care. You guys are baptized, your souls are saved, whatever. It was my friend who, her parents were very, very religious, and they would always have me read these books and not tell my parents about it, by the way, just go. They knew we didn't go to church, and they were like, well, we need to save this little girl.
Dang.
And they would... and my friend would tell me all sorts of stories that I had never heard of. I didn't know about the things that flied around and zapped you. So I learned so much about religion and Christianity from this friend and her parents. And my own parents had no clue the whole time. They probably still don't know.
That's grooming.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we want to talk about grooming, that's grooming.
That's a really good point, Bonnie. That is absolutely grooming. And your mom intrigues me because... she sounds so much like what I would have expected my grandmother and my uncle to be, but they never believed in the actual I mean, they believe in the demons, right? And the Antichrist and all of that, but there's a degree of separation where they don't truly believe that a demon is going to find its way into the house or whatever.
See,
it's more of a spiritual non-entity.
My mom got really into this when I was 5 because she already believed in that. I had my first exorcism before I was 5, so she believed in it already. Don't know where she heard it from because I was too young to know.
You had your first. Hold on, stop. You had your first.
My only exorcism.
Hold on. Okay, you had your exorcism.
Yes.
You were exorcised?
Yes. So I was always having bad dreams, like all the time. Like every night of my life, I would be like crying in my sleep, having bad dreams, or going to my parents' bed because I didn't want to be alone. Well, I had siblings, so I'd always go get in bed with my sister. And my grandma would come and pray over me and stuff because they said I had demons in me because of that. I think the thing was I was afraid of all this crap I was hearing.
Probably.
And so one time my parents' church broke off from the church that they were going to because they didn't believe in something that the pastor believed in, and we started going to this old lady's house named Miss Elaine, and I would always hang out in the basement.
I thought my family was like religious hardcore. No, you're going to church in this old lady's house. You got me beat, Bonnie. Hands down.
It's in Kansas. So I would go to church in this old lady's house in Kansas, but me and my sister would play with this this grown man in the basement while my family was in church, and I always think that was really weird. But
everything about this story is...
One day they came down and got me, just me, and brought me up with the congregation. There was like this man from Africa. I remember him very clearly. A bunch of old people and my mom, but my dad wasn't there for this.
They call us Satanists weird, man. The picture you're painting here is exactly what they accuse Satanists of doing. Here's little Bonnie in this basement with this weird old guy, and she comes up, and they've got the whole congregation is there standing around solemnly waiting to perform some sort of craven ritual. I mean, good God.
They put me on a chair in the middle of the living room, and they all were standing around me praying like in tongues and stuff. And the African man was like, I think mostly like the leader, like he started the praying and stuff. And I was like really bored, so I remember thinking, I'm gonna look at each of them for equal amount of time. Don't know why. I was like, I'd look at that one, equal amount of time. Now it's time to move. I don't know why I was doing that. But my mom told me...
you probably felt awkward, and that gave you something to focus your attention on other than the weirdness of everything that was happening around you.
So my mom told me like years later that my eyes turned black. And my mom doesn't lie. She believes that she saw that. So...
I mean, the mind can do... And I'm not saying that maybe your eyes did turn black. Who knows? I don't want to call her a liar, but... The mind can do crazy things when you really believe. It's like an optical illusion almost, you know? Yeah. So it isn't out of the realm of possibilities to see something. I mean, I see stuff all the time that I'm like, oh, that wasn't real. It was just my mind playing tricks on me, or I'm tired.
I think the term is pareidolia, I believe. Yeah. It's where you see faces and walls and stuff like that. Oh my God, is that a face?
Or like a shadow, like, oh my gosh, it's a man standing there. You turn on the light and it's not, you know.
Yeah. So Bonnie, and as you point out, the psychosomatic experience, I mean, it can be real if Bonnie as a child truly believed that she had demons and they were causing her bad dreams, then this exorcism could, in a very real way, exorcise those demons because that fulfills the criteria.
Placebo, right?
Yeah. So my question, did it alleviate the bad dreams?
Yeah, to an extent. I still had more bad dreams than normal, I think, the rest of my life, but now I don't have bad dreams at all. And yeah.
Amazing story. I'm going to need some time to process that. Thank you for sharing that, Bonnie. Let's go to the phones. Caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
Ralph.
Ralph, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, it was about what's happening in Ukraine, but since you're talking about religion, I just wanted to mention something. You know, religion controls people with myths and tall tales from what I've seen in my life. And there's a film that I watched years ago. It's on YouTube, Ring of Power. It's a full-length documentary by Grace Powers. That's the title. And it's like almost 5 hours long.
Oh, good luck. Okay, I was going to write down the name of it to watch it later, but if it's 5 hours long, I'm not going to pretend that I'm ever going to watch it.
You might really be interested once you start. But it's like a history lesson. And back like in about an hour and 30 minutes, something like that, they start talking about Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. And, you know, Julius Caesar declared himself God. And,
did he?
Yeah. But
Okay.
he had
know
children with Cleopatra. And one of his children was named Caesarion. And see, Caesar also had an adopted son. So when when
Isn't that what the C and C section
stands?
stands for?
Yes, it is, and that's where it came from.
Okay, that's what I would have assumed. Thank you.
Yep. So when Julius Caesar was killed, and then the thing with Mark Antony hooking up with Cleopatra, and then the the emperor of Rome, he came, and Cleopatra committed suicide. Mark Antony died, and it's a little confused in history about what happened to the children. Well, like they say, Jesus Christ, that's JC, and Julius Caesar, JC. That's kind of a little coincidence there. But the story was that Caesarion, they were looking for him to kill him because he was Caesar's blood son, and but Augustus.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with gods. You don't just kill the king. You have to also kill the king's son. I mean, that's just the way it was back then, because the king's son had a rightful claim to the throne.
Right, but the adopted son, who had no blood ties to Caesar, he was back in Rome, so he was in charge. So anyway, the story goes that there's some missing years of Jesus, and the story was that they took him to India, and he spent time there and basically studied Buddhism, and then came back, and he wanted to he wanted to get his rightful place.
So the hypothesis here is that Jesus is secretly Julius Caesar's son?
Right.
Is that where you're going?
Caesarion.
Okay.
And
I've never heard that one before.
I have heard that about Jesus going to India, and that there's a specific book I wrote in my list of books that I want to read about like the evidence that Jesus went to India, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Like Jesus.
Well, India was certainly a lot closer to the Middle East than it is to North America.
That's true. Right, and some Mormons believe Jesus went to North America.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was getting into. That I believe what they think is that, and I'm not a Mormon, so correct me if I'm wrong, but they think that those 3 days when Jesus died, he was over here.
He was just on vacation.
Well, he did
chilling
lots
with the
of
Native Americans, right?
They said that he appeared, so it wouldn't have been like that he had to walk or anything. So yeah, I guess that I may not make sense, but
it's all very confusing what the Mormons believe, and the only thing I know about Mormonism came from South Park, and that's Trey Parker and Matt Stone. And I know that sounds like stupid, right? But I learned a lot about Mormonism from South Park.
They actually taught serious things that a lot of Mormons need to hear about, like this woman who was like, hey, I don't believe this, prove it with us looking, and he couldn't do it, whatever his name is.
603-283-6160. Yeah, it was surprisingly accurate to Mormon beliefs. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
Do you think it's a respectable job to go around and threaten people over parking somewhere?
You're intentionally misrepresenting what a parking attendant does.
What do
I
they
don't
do?
think they threaten people in that manner. They write tickets.
What do you think a ticket is?
Annoying.
The ticket's a threat.
This is why I think you come off so bad in those videos. This is not how people act in the real world. It's very unusual.
The parking enforcers are issuing threats, and that's what a ticket is. If you don't pay the ticket, there's a consequence behind that. They'll tow your car. In some cases, they'll boot your car. It depends on what city. The people that work downtown, a lot of them loved the Robin Hooders because the Robin Hooders would regularly save. These are the people who are putting change in expired parking meters downtown. They would regularly save downtown denizens, people who are working or living downtown, from getting multiple parking tickets every month.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Meta says it is reinstating Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts after a 2-year ban. The pages were suspended after the former president's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2021, whipped into a frenzy over his lies about election fraud. Trump's Twitter account was restored in November. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Meta says it will unblock Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts in the coming weeks. This will once again give the former president direct access to hundreds of millions of his followers, just as he ramps up his 2024 bid for the White House. Trump's campaign had been petitioning Meta to lift the suspension, arguing it was a matter of free speech. Meta said it decided to reverse course because it believes the risk to public safety had significantly receded since the January 6 attack, but added it would put new guardrails in place to deter repeat offenses. Tony Waterman, Texas.
U.S. President Biden has announced the U.S. will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. It comes after Germany said it, too, would send tanks to the country ahead of an anticipated Russian spring offensive. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The U.S. is sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in what President Joe Biden called further evidence of an enduring, unflagging commitment to Ukraine. It followed phone calls with several European leaders about the renewed united front among Western nations. But to prevent a feared Russian retaliation, President Biden said the U.S. supply of tanks should not be viewed as an offensive threat to Russia. The U.S. has also promised to help train Ukrainian troops on how to operate and maintain the Abrams. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Stocks fell across the board Wednesday following a disappointing forecast from Microsoft earlier in the week. The tech giant predicted slower growth in its cloud computing business. FSN's Sally Patterson has more in New York.
Microsoft shares fell by as much as 1.4% on Wednesday, but later rallied slightly after the tech giant reported its cloud services business slowed last quarter and was expected to slow further in the current quarter. Its results come after it laid off roughly 10,000 workers last week in anticipation of a revenue drop. The forecast weighed on the wider markets. The technology-heavy Nasdaq closed down 0.2%, the S&P closed down 0.02%, while the Dow was up just 0.03%. But shares in media company News Corp rose 5% following the news that Rupert Murdoch was scrapping plans to recombine the company with Foxcorp.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the Ukrainian perspective on the need for the US and Europe to reach agreement on the supply of battle tanks to Kyiv. It has become a major rankle in the transatlantic alliance that may finally be overcome, with reports that Germany and the US have struck a deal over the supply of the heavy armoured equipment to Ukraine, even though the White House has argued in recent days that its M1 Abrams tanks are too complex and powerful for the battlefield. Yulia Mendel is a former press secretary for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and says Ukraine needs tanks now.
Russia is preparing to have more mobilized people and have the escalation like in March or April, few months only. And we have very, very little short time to prepare for this. So we are begging for tanks. The Ukrainian General Staff said that we need at least 300 of tanks to defend our borders from Russia that can attack from north, from south, and from the northeast of the country where there are hot battles right now. And as you understand, actually to get Ukrainians trained for these Western tanks and to have logistics of the tanks to Ukraine, it all takes time. So we are begging for the political decision to be made right now so that we can get tanks as soon as possible.
Tomorrow, what's it like working alongside Ukraine's wartime leader? We'll hear more from his former press secretary. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Meta says it is reinstating Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts after a 2-year ban. President Biden announces that the U.S. will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. And stocks fall across the board following a disappointing forecast from Microsoft, which predicted a slowdown in its cloud computing business. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer.
We've got Today Now's medical expert, Dr. Kareem Mazari, here to give us some tips on how to convince a stubborn little guy to take off his Spider-Man costume and start wearing normal clothes so people don't think he's a weirdo. And also joining us is my son Spencer, still dressed as Spider-Man. Spencer.
Hi, Mom. I find the best thing to do is to try and have a dialogue with your child. Now, Spencer, why won't you take your costume off? Because then people will know my true identity.
You're not even wearing the mask. People already know who you are.
Well, bargaining can work. Explain to your child.
Is it not enough that I say take off the Spider-Man costume? Now I've got to bargain with my own child? Jesus Christ.
You know,
Spencer, sit down. Sit down. Do you want to be put in the silence trunk again? You don't like the silence trunk, do you?
Okay. I'm Spider-Man! I'm Spider-Man!
Spencer, sit down right now. Sit down, you little face, or I will break the rest of your toys on purpose. Do you understand me?
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Heresy Talk Live, talk radio that you defile. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And I want to say thank you to Elephant in the Room. He's I say he, I don't know anything about Elephant in the Room, but they're tonight's amplifier. That means they're a member of the AMPS program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. If you value the show, if you like the idea of a bunch of heathens sitting up here talking about freedom and why we believe the things that we believe. And I want to circle back to something I said earlier, and I don't want to get back into the argument about whether or not something is or isn't a belief, but I absolutely believe that the way to make a better world is to treat one another with compassion and peace and non-aggression.
Oh, I didn't doubt that you do believe that.
I know, I just didn't say it then, and I wanted to make sure that I did get that said. But you can join the AMPS program if you value everything that's going on here, the whole this that is Free Talk Live. amps.freetalklive.com stands for advertise, market, promote, and support. So if you do like the show, that's the best way to do it. You may have noticed that this is the first time I've done one of these sort of lead-ins, when we call them live reads, when we get back, even though I'm not reading anything. They're called that because generally you do read things. Anyway, this is the first time we've done one tonight, and we don't generally do them anymore. And if we do, it's usually something Free Talk Live related that we're promoting, like the chat server or the TikTok or whatever. And that's because we don't really have any amplifiers anymore. You
mean advertisers?
Yeah, that's what I meant, advertisers. Thank you, Bonnie. I mean, we asked a lot of them, and we've turned down a lot of them, and some of them, the relationships have just run their course. They've ended, like with Bitcoin.com. That relationship certainly ran its course over the 10, 12 years. I don't know exactly how long, but I'm more interested in the idea of being beholden to the listeners, and not even beholden, because that's not the right word. It's not like joining the AMPS program gives you any sway to tell us what to talk about or what not to talk about. You can call the show to change what we're talking about, but like you don't get any special perks of being an amplifier. If you value the show, you should sign up and help show your support. But you're not getting much out of it except the continued existence of Free Talk Live.
Don't you get some kind of feed?
You do good in an AMPS only feed, certainly. But that shouldn't be the reason you join. If you join, it shouldn't be because you get this or you get this interaction. I mean, really, I know I should check the amplifier messages more often. I never do it. And I'm terrible about that. I know I should, but so don't expect it. Expect to show your support for a show that you value, because that's what it's all about. amps.freetalklive.com. It only costs $5 per month. That gets you in. That's amps.freetalklive.com, because we are viewer driven these days, or viewer supported these days, or listener supported, however you wish to characterize the people tuning in. And apparently the topic of religion is a popular one. It makes me wonder whether or not I want to pick up the idea of doing an atheist show at some point, a side show, not a Free Talk Live focused atheist show or anything like that. It's just my own after show, probably not even here, but sort of similar to the Satanic Bible studies that I used to do, but atheistic instead. And those were sort of atheistic anyway. But I mean, I've forgotten until tonight and last night that this is a topic that I find interesting and fascinating, and I do like talking about it, and I do have a lot of mostly useless knowledge. It's not useless because it's inherently useless. It's useless because I don't use it. So I have a lot of useless knowledge about Christianity and religious history and Puritanism in the United States.
Yeah, might as well use it.
Yeah, and like that's the perfect way to do it. I didn't grow up watching, but I entered adulthood and matured as an adult watching The Atheist Experience. It was one of my favorite shows, and I eventually became sort of jaded about them and lost interest in them because I don't remember exactly why. It had to do with them becoming more humanist than libertarian. I don't remember all of the specifics. And maybe they did become libertarians. I don't remember now because I stopped watching. But they went in a statist sort of direction, if I recall correctly. Or they just had that innately. But I loved the show. It was a lot of fun, right? And I'm like, I could do something different now. There's nothing stopping me from doing it. That's sort of what we've been doing all night tonight, except we're not proselytizing the word of atheism, which is what they sort of did with The Atheist Experience. But it's reminding me that I do enjoy the topic. It's fun. It's entertaining to me, and it seems to entertain our callers. So let's keep going with those callers. We have Rob on the line from Vermont. Rob, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, I think that you can get more truth out of listening to George Carlin and his view on the Bible.
George Carlin had a lot of intelligent things to say. What did he have to say about the Bible, though?
Well, I mean, there are certain things that he said that I can't say.
Okay, fair.
Now, but I mean, he said it's make believe. It's just a way to be able to control the people, and I mean, because see, I remember in the 60s and the 70s that when the Bible was introduced to me, I always remember, feeling that I was, being taught what to believe in this book. They encouraged me to read it, but when I would read it, I would have a different point of view. But, when they would teach it, it would be, a little different. And if you questioned it, oh boy, you either got the ruler or, or whatever, or spanked or something. But
see, that's rough. I was thankfully never punished for asking any questions about this. I was typically told, I was told not to ask those sorts of questions or something along those lines, but I was never punished or faced any sort of real repercussions for asking some of these difficult questions.
Whenever I asked any questions, which absolutely, I was just asking my mom, oh, can you clear this up for me? I was never asking I figured it out and I'm not going to be a Christian anymore, because I was completely a Christian until I was 21 or maybe 20. But anyways, anytime I did ask one of those questions and my mom didn't have a prepackaged answer for it, she would just say that God is so complicated we couldn't possibly understand him with our human understanding.
See, I did something similar in that I don't remember exactly my age, but I was maybe 10, 11 years old, but I had figured out the Easter Bunny wasn't real, the Tooth Fairy wasn't real, Santa wasn't real. And so finally I went to my grandmother. I was like, oh, I figured it out. This God thing isn't real either.
Oh, no, don't say that.
Well, she did not like that at all. I didn't get in trouble or grounded or anything like that, but I got a stern talking to. And then after that, the daily Bible studies and all that sort of thing started. And she just doubled down on it. But if you're a religious person and you're trying to raise religious kids, I can't imagine anything being more counterproductive to that religious upbringing than intentionally telling them lies like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, knowing they're going to find out those things aren't true.
Well, and how is that different?
Right.
From,
it's absolutely not different. From what I could tell, it was exactly the same. So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, guys.
Oh, okay, I thought you had more. Yeah, thank you so much for the call tonight, Rob. Let's keep going. We have Neil on the line from Arizona. Neil, you're on Free Talk Live.
Did you say Bill?
I said Neil.
Oh, okay. I just couldn't understand. Hi, Aria.
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
I'm still waiting for your debut on K2X Radio out here.
Yeah, I've been a bit distracted the last 3 weeks ago. I'm planning a bachelorette party with a friend of mine. We're planning a fairly extensive trip out of New Hampshire, so that's sort of gotten my attention. If I'm not doing that, I'm sort of working a lot. So I've been a bit distracted. I do intend to call. I mean, no doubt.
Okay, well, hopefully you got my phone number there in front of you. Would you please call me and let me know that you are going to call in so I can make sure I'm in front of my radio and listening?
Yeah, I would. And again, I would rather email the guy prior to calling in because I don't want to feel like he's being blindsided or anything like that.
Well, he already knows you're going to call in. He thought you were going to call in last weekend. Because I thought you were too. So he's expecting your calls. His name is Rob Hansen, or Miss Rob Hansen. He calls himself.
Has he or she changed?
He is expecting. Well, he's a transgender. I told you that's what I wanted you to talk to him about.
But
he is expecting your call. He has been for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Does Rob Hansen call themselves he?
No, he calls himself Miss Rob Hansen.
So that would be she?
Yeah, well, he's actually a he, but he calls himself a she.
Well, you already knew what he believed when he said transgender.
I'm trying to parse all of this, though. Is Rob Hansen still the name that this person is going by?
Yes, he goes by Miss Rob Hansen. Yes, he goes by Rob Hansen.
Okay, now my next question has to be: Is this a joke? Because there have been there's been countless.
It's not a joke.
No, I want to explain. I'm not trying to be. Yeah, let me explain, dude. Let me explain. I'm not trying to be offended or offensive or anything like that, but there are some, especially conservatives out there, who want to poke fun at transgenderism by declaring themselves to be women or going to the DMV and getting their license to say women because just anyone could do it. And now I'm a woman and you can't prove otherwise. There are those people out there. I'm just asking, is Rob doing that?
No. He kind of surprised me when he came out of the ball and started to call himself Miss Rob Hansen, but it's not a joke. It's one of your affiliates. It's what I'm listening to you on K2X Radio. And I'm not trying to pull nothing on you or nothing.
No, I didn't think you were. I'm just trying to find out the position of this person who is transgender.
He was previously married. He has 2 daughters. And then he decided that I guess he doesn't like girls anymore.
I guess
he can transition into being a girl and still like girls. I mean, I do.
The thing that's confusing us, I guess, is just that their name is still Rob, but maybe their position is just, I don't need to change my name because names aren't necessarily feminine or masculine. That's valid.
And also he's using masculine pronouns. So he's using he.
The caller is using he, him. But
yeah.
Is Miss Rob Hansen bothered when people refer to them as he, him?
As what?
He, him.
He's not really offended by anything, or she, or whatever I'm supposed to call him, her. I don't know. I'm still trying. I knew him for years on this radio station as Rob Hansen.
Right.
So it's only been the last couple of years or so that he's decided to call himself Miss Rob Hansen. I'm expecting any day maybe he'll change it to Roberta Hansen or something.
Well,
I
mean,
don't know.
if the name is attached to what the person does for a living, I certainly understand. Like unless I was like truly inspired to change my name to something, I'm sort of stuck with Aria DiMezzo at this point because that's the person who's one of the co-hosts on Free Talk Live, the one who ran for sheriff. I've changed my name. I break all of the attachment to those things that I've done, right? So I could understand why someone who of local notoriety or whatever notoriety doesn't want to change their name. I certainly get it. Are you making any sort of effort to call Rob Hansen by she, her, or do you not respect the person enough to use the pronouns they prefer?
I call into the show and talk on the show every now and then, and I just don't. I just avoid the having to say. Actually, he doesn't require any of his callers. Everybody just calls him Rob. You know,
sure.
They don't say Mr. or Miss or anything. They just call him Rob.
I think this is a situation like when Sarah from New Mexico called you a transformer. They don't mean anything by it. They're just so confused.
So that wasn't why you called in tonight, was it, Neil?
No, actually.
Yeah, sorry to direct things. That I just realized a few seconds ago that wasn't why you called. So sorry.
No, I just kind of went on there because I'm still waiting for you to call in on the show. But what's the girl's name that you're with?
There's two, Bonnie and Nikki. I'm Bonnie.
Oh, Bonnie. Okay.
There's
things.
also
Bonnie,
Nikki.
You make me. Oh, Nikki. I think Bonnie was the one that was just talking, though, right?
Yes.
Bonnie makes me wish I was 40 years younger. And I want to, and I'm totally changing the topic on you. Have you guys ever tried that Nutella hazelnut chocolate butter?
Yes.
Nutella?
Disgusting, isn't it?
No,
it's delicious. What are you talking about? It tastes like a Ferrero Rocher.
Unfortunately, it has soy in it, so I can't eat it anymore.
I just tried it for the first time in my life, and I bought the smallest jar that they had just because I love hazelnuts. But oh my God, it's terrible.
It is weird that it doesn't remind me of like hazelnuts. Hazelnuts are just totally different than that. That tastes like chocolate.
Well, because once you mix it with the chocolate, it totally changes the flavor profile.
I didn't realize it was actually mixed with chocolate.
Why not just have if there was a chocolate Nutella, I would be all over that because that would be fantastic.
Well, just regular chocolate?
Yeah,
I think they have that.
I love regular chocolate. They definitely have regular chocolate.
Well, I mean,
but like
a chocolate spread,
like a spread
without
Yeah.
the hazelnut?
Yeah.
I
probably
think
make
they have
some
that.
like that.
I think they have
So I
that.
could go for that. I'm not a fan or a disliker of hazelnut. I don't think I've ever really had hazelnuts, but I do like chocolate. But you didn't enjoy it. Well,
Black and hazelnuts in the no. I love hazelnuts. I grew up eating them. You know, you crack the shell. You know, Mom used to buy a bunch of nuts, walnuts, hazelnuts, whatever, peanuts, and the shells, and we'd eat them. But I just tried this for the first time, and I think it's god awful. I mean, it's like something a 2-year-old would probably like. But
so not an endorsement from Neil in Arizona.
I would say get some croissants like that you can bake in the oven, and they're just so warm and delicious, and then put it on there if you don't care about ingredients, because those things from the stores have all bad.
So you're from Arizona, Neil. I assume you'd never heard of what they call the fluffernutter.
Oh, what?
Oh, yeah. So this is a New England delicacy where we have this thing called fluff. It is a marshmallow spread, and we make sandwiches with peanut butter in the fluff, and they're called fluffernutters. And I have just recently realized that this isn't a thing everywhere else. This is very much a New England thing, because when you tell people from other places, they're like, what the hell is that?
Is this like one step above s'mores?
Well, it's one step above peanut butter and jelly.
Or next to a step above.
I don't know about above.
Below, whatever.
I haven't tried it, to be fair.
I have not either. Thank you so much for the call tonight, Neil. Every time I hear about the fluffernutter, I mean, that's just way too much sugar for me, right?
It's just going to be too sugary, but I am intrigued.
You've missed your period. You're supposed to eat it when you're a kid.
Oh, I'm sure, right?
Right.
I'm sure kids love them.
Whenever I used to see that marshmallow fluff at the store as a kid, I would always be like, why don't we get that? Like, to my parents, like, well, we should just get that. And they'd be like, we don't need that.
Well, you can make fudge out of it, too.
Yeah.
It's multi-purpose.
Out of marshmallow cream?
Yeah.
How do you make fudge out of that?
I don't know. There's a recipe on the back, though.
See,
that's the only reason why I knew is because there's a recipe on the back.
I like that idea, man. Get some marshmallow cream and like 5 bottles of Hershey's syrup and just like combine the two and then just die in hedonism. Yeah.
It's mostly just like an ingredient, though, right? So I never heard of people just eating it on sandwiches until like last year.
No, there's no crunch to it. There's no bite. There's no texture. It's just chewy sweetness. I can imagine how awful that is to eat.
That's why I get crunchy peanut butter.
Okay.
Probably.
You should try it. You have to try one.
I want to try one at the Moose Mart at some point because they have it there.
You may be able to get me to try one if it's crunchy peanut butter. I generally hate crunchy peanut butter, but when I hear this fluffer note, I think about just the softness of the bread and the
it's like a peanut butter and
nothingness
jelly?
of the rest of it. Yeah, I guess. Well, I'm not a big fan of peanut butter and jelly either.
Oh.
I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not like, boy, I sure do love PB&J.
No, I eat peanut butter and jelly every single day.
Every day?
When I work, because it's the only thing that doesn't make me nauseous at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
okay, that's fair.
Easy to make for work, too.
Let's keep going with the phones. We have Scott on the line. Scott, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind tonight?
Oh, howdy. Hold on, turn off my speakerphone.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to just sort of blindside you there and take you off guard.
Oh, no. You're fine. So I just was calling in I was listening to a show a couple days back, and they were talking about civil disobedience. And it reminded me about some stuff that I've been doing lately in my town where we have a train trestle in our town that's pretty dangerous, and the government shut it down and said it's for government use only.
What's a train trestle?
Before the train goes over a road.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was called that.
Or train crossing, not trestle.
Sorry, so did they shut down the entire road?
They shut down the road that, like, we've been using that road ever since that road's been built to just get around town, and since they closed it because it's too dangerous, it's literally cut the town in half.
Whoa.
And
where is this?
It's in Pendleton, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, yeah, I've been driving over that road my whole life that I could drive. It was there before I could drive, and I just decided a few months ago that screw it, I'm not listening to that order. And I've been driving over it, and I've been pulled over at least twice doing it. And both times, I don't know how I've done this, I told the police officer that he's not my dad, and
that worked.
He just told me to go away.
Well, I mean, what could they cite you with? Yeah, I mean, if they put up road closed signs or something like that, they may be able to get you. But even then, I'm not sure. That we sort of get back to that Nazi kindergarten playground argument, which was something like, if it doesn't actually say "do not cross" or whatever, then you're allowed to cross. I think they used caution tape to section off one of the playgrounds, and then they tried to say that these people were trespassers. Like, no, it just says caution, not do not cross, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you just have a sign there that says road closed, maybe they have an argument, but if they just declared, no, don't drive down this road, I don't think it would hold up. So
bigger question is
what they did is they painted on the road for government use only or emergency use only, one of those things.
No, I don't think they can do that. I think you have a solid. I'm not a legal expert, but I think you have solid legal ground here.
Probably why you didn't get ticketed.
The bigger thing is, what are they going to do if everyone starts just using the road anyway? That's
ding, ding, ding.
I hope that
you're
spreading the idea.
I want one of them to give me a ticket. Honestly, I do, so I can take it to court.
Yeah, get some publicity out of that, man.
Get some publicity out of it. Get it to where the town looks stupid, and they eventually either give us the road back. And I'll admit the intersection is dangerous. There's been like 3 cars hit there in the last 2 years.
What makes it dangerous?
It's very steep coming up to the track, and if you're in too long of a vehicle, you can get hung on it.
Okay, and Bonnie's question was, they got hit by trains, or are they colliding with other vehicles?
Hit by trains.
Good
wow,
Lord.
that's terrifying.
Yeah, that's pretty intense, right?
Maybe they need to move the train tracks.
Or fix the road. I mean,
or get rid of the road. Like, if they just took out the road and filled it with gravel and just made it to where there wasn't a road there anymore, I'd be like, fine. But the government doesn't get their own special road.
Yeah.
Is the way I look at it.
But you would have to still cross over it because that's an interesting story, Scott. I wish you the best of luck with it. I mean, keep fighting the good fight out there, man. And again, got to reiterate, I'm not an attorney. I can't offer you legal advice. But if I was in that situation, it would be a battle that I would want to fight.
Yeah, I would want to take that to court.
That feels like a winnable battle that can actually achieve some good. This is a road that cuts your city in half. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Meta says it is reinstating Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts after a 2-year ban. The pages were suspended after the former president's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2021, whipped into a frenzy over his lies about election fraud. Trump's Twitter account was restored in November. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Meta says it will unblock Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts in the coming weeks. This will once again give the former president direct access to hundreds of millions of his followers, just as he ramps up his 2024 bid for the White House. Trump's campaign had been petitioning Meta to lift the suspension, arguing it was a matter of free speech. Meta said it decided to reverse course because it believes the risk to public safety had significantly receded since the January 6 attack, but added it would put new guardrails in place to deter repeat offenses. Tony Waterman, Texas.
U.S. President Biden has announced the U.S. will supply tanks to Ukraine following intense international pressure to provide heavier weaponry to Kyiv. It comes after Germany said it, too, would send tanks to the country ahead of an anticipated Russian spring offensive. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The US is sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in what President Joe Biden called further evidence of an enduring, unflagging commitment to Ukraine. It followed phone calls with several European leaders about the renewed united front among Western nations. But to prevent a feared Russian retaliation, President Biden said the US supply of tanks should not be viewed as an offensive threat to Russia. The US has also promised to help train Ukrainian troops on how to operate and maintain the Abrams. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
Stocks fell across the board Wednesday following a disappointing forecast from Microsoft earlier in the week. The tech giant predicted slower growth in its cloud computing business. FSN's Sally Patterson has more in New York.
Microsoft shares fell by as much as 1.4% on Wednesday, but later rallied slightly after the tech giant reported its cloud services business slowed last quarter and was expected to slow further in the current quarter. Its results come after it laid off roughly 10,000 workers last week in anticipation of a revenue drop. The forecast weighed on the wider markets. The technology-heavy Nasdaq closed down 0.2%, the S&P closed down 0.02%, while the Dow was up just 0.03%. But shares in media company News Corp rose 5% following the news that Rupert Murdoch was scrapping plans to recombine the company with Fox Corp.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is...
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It It is Free Talk Live, and you can still join us. We're not out of time yet. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
And as we briefly mentioned earlier, we do have our own TikTok channel. You can find that at tiktok.freetalklive.com. There's a number of short videos there. I try to keep them less than 2 minutes long, but that isn't always possible. It depends on the segment that we're talking about and how exciting it is. There's one that I have to make, but I have the timestamp, but I didn't write down a day that it was for. And that created an issue, right? Well, I know it could only have been a Monday or a Tuesday because I know Ian was the one who gave me the timestamp, and I was on that night. Therefore, it was a Monday or Tuesday, but which Monday or Tuesday? This is sort of the issue. I wasn't available to make it that week, so it got put off for a bit. Now I'm sitting back going, oh, man, when was that? And so, yeah, we're a bit behind on the TikTok episodes. I'm sure there was some episodes, I'm sure there was something in last night's show that would have been great if I had clipped it, but nothing struck out to me as we were talking.
Something funny happened on Sunday, and I'm like, I should tell Aria about this so she can make a TikTok or whatever. And then, of course, now I don't even remember what it was about.
Yeah, that happens. Always good to just grab one of these sheets of paper and just all you got to do is write down a time and preferably a date. That way I don't end up in this situation where I'm looking at them going,
what week was this? What day was this?
Yeah, I'm like, Ian wrote down, I have a sheet of paper here in Ian's handwriting that says the word slavery on it. Thanks.
Yeah, they have funny show prep all the time on Sundays, and I don't know where they find it. Like one Sunday,
Sundays it's always been like that. Richie,
he just has a knack for it, you know.
2 weeks ago, they were talking about a pigeon that flew meth in a pigeon backpack into a prison, and the guards were for like 20 minutes struggling to catch him.
Like, can we just take a moment, everyone? Visualize that. A bunch of prison guards trying to catch this pigeon wearing a tiny little backpack.
Somebody had to sit there and make by hand this pigeon backpack.
I mean, I'm impressed.
And the pigeon wasn't just like, I'll bring it to whatever human. It was like, F the cops, flying away.
That is amazing. Presumably the pigeon was trained to go to a specific
it was like a carrier
person.
pigeon,
It's crazy.
That's pretty impressive, man. That's creative. I think there's better uses of a person's time, but hey, man, whatever makes you happy.
I do have to say, Captain said it was the coolest pigeon ever, and I said, I don't know. I don't think meth is that cool, Captain.
Fair point. I'm not a fan of meth either. I mean, you shouldn't be smuggling drugs into prison anyway. It's kind of frowned upon.
Yeah, why not?
Well, it's not doing them any favors.
Live
certainly.
your life.
They would live their lives better if they were free.
That's true.
And they're not going to be freer by being on, by
Can you imagine
being caught with meth or whatever. That's just going to extend your sentence.
Being on meth would be so scary in prison. I mean, I've never been on meth.
And I don't want to be.
I can imagine. I've watched enough Intervention to know that I don't want to try it.
I've lived in Keenan, Mississippi long enough to know that I don't want to try meth. Let's go to the phone. Speaking of meth, we have David on the line from New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live.
So if shouldn't smuggle drugs into prison, how else are the guards going to make enough money to feed their families?
Well, I've actually had show prep for like months about exactly this topic. There's some prison that is resisting, or it's the federal state prison system. I don't remember the details now. It's been in my show prep for months because we haven't gotten to it. They don't want the rates at which a person's commissary is withdrawn. They don't want to give people back their commissary money after they get out of prison or something because they make tens of thousands of dollars a year off of it. Or it's something to that effect. It's some really screwed up thing.
Forget about their commissary or something?
I don't remember the specifics. And like I said, we haven't gotten into it. It's been my show prep for months. So we're never going to get to it at this point. It's just in some save folder on my laptop or my phone somewhere, and I'm never going to see it again. But yeah, they make money off of commissary.
Yeah, and the pigeon backpack thing, that's been done prior to that one event. That people have done that before. Not for prisons, but made backpacks for pigeons to carry whatever.
That's adorable.
It really is, except if meth is in it.
Yeah.
And did I hear Nikki right? Did Nikki say that you missed your period?
You did say that, and I was going to make a joke about it. I can't believe.
When did I say that?
You did, yeah.
You said, well, you missed your period. You're supposed to eat it when, and I was about to say, when you're on your period, but I was like, no, it's not a funny joke.
About the fluffernutter? You
missed like
when we were kids.
Okay, yeah.
You missed the period in which one was supposed to eat a fluffernutter.
Yeah, you're always supposed to eat a fluffernutter when you're on your period.
Said, you missed your period. Yeah.
Well, actually, you've missed quite a few. And speaking of the fluffernutter, isn't that a position on a porn set? One of the workers?
No, just a fluffer.
Well, the fluffer is the fluffer, and then the nutter is the dude that does the
rest.
Okay, David, what did you call it about tonight?
About science fiction. You know Fahrenheit 451, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you know what is it? Star Trek, Next Generation, whatever. I don't know. The one with Picard, Captain Picard.
Yeah, that was Next Generation.
Yeah, there's a scene where Picard, and this was also done. A similar scene was done in Fahrenheit 451, I believe, where the Picard is tied up or whatever. I can't remember. I can't picture it. I did see it once, but it's too long ago. And his captor is telling him, asking him how many lights he sees.
Oh yeah, he was captured by not the Romulans, the Cardassians.
And it's not it's not Fahrenheit 451. It's 1984, where he asks him how many lights do you see, and he says, "I see 4," and he's like, zap. He gets zapped until he sees 5.
The episode of Star Trek, I don't remember the name of the episode of Star Trek. It was a 2-parter though, and it was the Cardassians who had captured Picard and were torturing him.
That sounds funnier.
Yeah.
And so the what they're asking the person to do, or telling the person to do, or coercing the person to do under duress, is to suspend reality, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
To lie to themselves.
Pardon?
To lie to themselves.
And that's key, Bonnie, because he mentioned at the end of the episode that one of the whole things about this experience, Picard did in the Star Trek episode, I don't know about 1984, well, I do know about 1984, but I don't remember that specific part of 1984, but Picard said that what terrified him the most was that he could see 5 lights at the end of it, or 3 lights. I don't remember how many he was supposed to see versus how many there actually were, but it was like, say there are 4 lights, and by the end of it, after being tortured and seeing this relief, he could see a 4th light. He had lied to himself. He had convinced himself it was there.
Right. So that's one concept. Another concept, though, is now should the captive person, one being tortured or under duress, coerced, whatever, should they have had enough respect for their captor to tell them what they wanted to hear?
I'm sorry, run that by me again.
Should the captive have had more respect for their captor, or enough respect for their captor, to tell the captor what the captor wanted to hear?
Wouldn't it be more respectful to them to tell them the truth?
Pardon?
Wouldn't it?
Well, yes, I agree. I agree. Yes, Bonnie, I agree. It's more respectful to tell them the truth. They should not suspend their own reality and lie to the captor and tell the captor what the captor wants to hear.
I know this is terrible, but I see it from a utilitarian perspective. I mean, Picard was a captive. He was being tortured. He had nothing to gain by not complying at this point.
I was just asking about the concept of respect. It's just like,
in that situation, I think the sensible thing for Picard would have been to lie and say, "Yes, I see 4 lights. I will take you up on your offer of retiring in a beach house and having these philosophical discussions with you. Yes, I see 4 lights."
Yeah, as soon as he figured out the game.
I can see both viewpoints, other than sacrificing one's own integrity and to lie to gain what you're going to gain. But now let's transfer this to the personal pronouns question.
Well, it's not necessarily sacrificing your integrity to live to fight another day, right? It can be, certainly, but it isn't necessarily.
But transfer the whole scenario now to the personal pronouns question.
Is anyone under duress?
Can you explain how we're going to make that?
Yes, people are. Oh, yeah, most obviously people are under duress.
Maybe in Toronto.
So, what is the connection between this lights thing, David, and pronouns? Can you draw this connection for me?
Well, first of all, Bonnie was ahead of you. So, in regard to people in Toronto, they're people too. So it's a real situation because, as you admit, it happens in Toronto, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's really bad. I think it's really wrong.
What's happening in Toronto? Because I don't know anything about it.
Toronto, that people, it is literally against the law to misgender someone. And I think that's wrong. And I think Arya would agree.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's easy to accidentally do with some people, you know? It's not...
Even if you want to offend them, you shouldn't go to prison for words.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And what was your question, Arya?
I didn't know about the Toronto thing, so I was wondering how you were drawing a connection between the Picard episode and torture and periods of duress and the pronoun thing.
Okay, I'll answer your question.
Well, you did answer the question. It's that this is happening in Toronto, that these people are under duress if they don't say there are 4 lights or if they don't use the certain pronoun or whatever.
Right, and they're also sacrificing their own reality in favor of somebody else's reality.
Not really, man. That's putting, look, and I agree entirely that the law is wrong and should never have been used for this purpose, but man, that's making a mountain out of a molehill. To act like calling me she is going to traumatize someone and cause them to, I've sacrificed my reality. How can I look myself in the mirror? That's absolute nonsense, man.
There's something else you're missing.
It's more a matter of basic human decency. It doesn't conflict with my understanding of reality. It doesn't conflict with my understanding of reality to call someone he, she, whatever they want. Right? It's just a matter of simple courtesy to this human being. So, I mean, go ahead, David.
Missing, Arya.
And what is that?
What it is that when a person has lived whatever percentage of their life, and they've gone through life, and a tree is a tree, and the sky is blue, and this and that, and then you walk down the street and you see somebody, and your subconscious tells you, you don't have to think about it, your subconscious tells you, that's a tree, that's a dog, that's a man. And then the man tells you, no, I'm not a man, I'm a woman, and call me her or she or whatever. And it's incredibly difficult for somebody, not because they don't want to, but because they've lived 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, when they see somebody who has the characteristics of a man, it's incredibly difficult to shift the automatic process, which is speaking, which is language, which is thinking. It's incredibly difficult to shift out of that automatic process. And so it's not that they don't want to do it.
I'm aware, David, and I've always been an advocate that especially for elderly people, this is why I don't freak out about people who use different pronouns for me, because one, it's not worth getting worked up over, but two, most people don't mean anything wrong. It does take some amount of effort to reprogram your brain to refer to people with this characteristics a certain way or with those characteristics a certain way. It does take some level of effort and focus. And
did I not say exactly that? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I literally said that with the caller before that was saying but he was talking about Miss Ron Brown or whatever. Well, I literally said it's like when Sarah called Arya a transformer, she didn't mean anything by it, because she's just confused or
just didn't know. Yeah,
doesn't. So funny.
Yeah,
stupid.
I would also argue another point I don't think that has been made, that the person wanting to be called by whatever pronoun that is a little bit out of sync from certain other viewers' perspective with their appearance, that why does that trump the other person, trump their right, whatever, I'm lacking which word I want to use, the right, the privilege, the whatever.
Well, I can answer this question.
Okay, we'll answer it then.
Well, as a general rule, language, definitions, words, they mean what the largest percentage of people says they mean, right? A tree isn't a tree because
democracy, yes.
Yes. A tree isn't a tree because when we look at it, we go, well, obviously that thing is a thing that starts with a T and has an R and ends with an E. No, it's because we as English speakers have called it a tree and everyone else agrees it's a tree, and that's what a tree is. And if I were to pick up a rock and say, this is a tree, it wouldn't be a tree because everyone else, the majority of people would say, no, that's not a tree, that's still a rock. And this is the case with she, her. The majority, David, let me finish the damn point. The majority of people now, seems to be the majority, are saying, well, the word chic is inclusive of people who have these characteristics. born men or whatever, and the word he is inclusive of these people that were born women or whatever. And they're expanding those definitions to mean different things. And it would appear that the majority of people agree with that new definition.
Well, and it's just respectful, right? So I've had, certain people who are like, okay, this is my legal name or whatever, but this is my preferred name, whether they're trans or not. That's just like, oh, this is the nickname I go by. Like, please call me this. It's just the respectful thing to address people as they want to be addressed. Mistakes happen. And with some people, especially people that are, non-binary and then they're using they or whatever other pronouns, it can be tricky, especially for older people. But I think it's just the respectful thing to do.
And the other thing, because he asked a question and we all should get to answer it.
Absolutely.
I think that not nobody, I mean, I don't know your life, but I really doubt that people are going up to you and being like, I demand you call me this. I mean, you call Arya voluntarily all the time.
What? What's your point?
It's because you're not under duress or something. Unless somebody's going up to you and walking down the street and you see a tree and then you see a man and they say, no, I'm a woman, call me this, which is what you said. This is the scenario you said. I really don't think that happens to you. I mean, often at least.
Well, I'm not talking about Arya specifically in this case. I'm talking generally speaking.
Bonnie's making a fair point. You're arguing about some hypothetical that has not ever happened.
It does happen.
No, David. People don't just walk down the street and go, I'm a man or I'm a woman. That doesn't happen, David.
Okay, you're right, Arya. That never happens. You are so correct, Arya. I have seen the light, Arya. Thank you.
I mean, we can invent hypothetical scenarios where X or Y is wrong all day long. It's meaningless. It's intellectual masturbation. It's pointless.
What if Nikki threw a fluffernutter at my face? I'm mad at her now.
Yeah. Would that be assault?
Would it?
Would it be assault if she had COVID and transmitted it to you by throwing the
Yeah. Yeah, biting the fluffernutter first.
So, man, I got lost in the fluffernutter, man.
What if? What if?
My little brother, when he was a kid, would say what ifs so much that seriously he'd start talking and I just learned to stop listening to him. And to this day, like he'll come up to me and be telling me something and I'll be like, I forgot to listen to you. I'm so serious.
That's really funny. I mean, what if is it can pose an interesting question, right?
Or you can just go down a useless rabbit hole.
Right, which is what this is. I mean, certainly there are realistic scenarios where you, David, in New Mexico, you could encounter a trans person in the streets. And you could end up in a conversation with them where you use a pronoun and they could say, no, don't use that pronoun, use this other pronoun. But it's never happened to you and it's probably never going to happen to you. You're getting worked up about this figment of your imagination. You've invented this figment of imagination and now you're upset about it.
And this is why I asked him, like, who's being coerced? Like, okay, sure, the people in Toronto or maybe it's all of Canada. I don't know. There's this law that if you misgender someone, you can go to prison for it. That's wrong. Everybody here believes that's wrong. So I don't know what he wants. It's like he thought he got this gotcha at us with this 1984
I mean,
Star
that
Trek
was a good analogy and I liked it, but I just don't understand what motivates a person to dream up this hypothetical wild scenario. Just imagine this thing happening and then getting upset about it.
Yeah. And what's the point?
And losing the ability to recognize that this thing they just imagined up is imaginary. Like, that's a real thing to David. This is the thing that's actually happening to people. What is Arya going to do about this travesty being done to people? But it's just this imaginary thing in your head, David. I mean, certainly there's some trans people out there who aren't positive, who aren't nice when they get misgendered. There's the Supermam. I think that was out in Arizona, which is right next door to New Mexico. She flipped out and started kicking over displays at GameStop because they called her a guy. There's certainly people out there like that. And they go viral for a reason. And it's rare for a reason. The last one I saw of someone doing this was Tiffany from GameStop. And that was what? I think
years ago?
Yeah, I think I lived in
during COVID.
Yeah, I think, no, it was further. I think I lived in Mississippi when that happened.
I must be thinking of something else then.
I don't know, it may have been more recently, but it was a long time ago, and it's not something that's happening every single day, and it's probably nothing that's ever happened. Sure, some listener out there is like, oh, it happened to me before.
If it happened to David, he would have been screaming about it from the beginning of the call, or at least when I said it never happened to him.
Yeah. So, I mean, these things do happen. They can happen, but not in the way that David imagines, and they certainly never happen to David, and they're not common. And you're basically asking me to denounce you're basically asking a Muslim to denounce the Muslim aggression, the terrorists. That's the word I'm looking for. You're like, well, you're a Muslim. How come you're not speaking out against these terrorists? They're terrorists and they're Muslims and they're doing these evil things. But okay, yes, they're doing these evil things. But like what I'm doing has nothing to do with them. What I'm doing has nothing to do with these trans people flipping out. Plus, they're a shockingly tiny minority of the trans population. I don't know any of these people.
And also, we can't really compare. Like, even if you misgender a trans person and they get upset at you, so what? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, you don't want to upset people, but we can't really compare that to torturing someone until they say that there's 4 lights.
No, but you can compare it to arresting someone and imprisoning them and holding them against their will, which is what happens in the law that we all denounce and obviously oppose because it's a stupid law. But, I mean, there is some duress there, but not otherwise. And
yeah, and I mean, obviously, that's just completely ridiculous. Because as I mentioned, it's easy to make mistakes. You know, people are learning, especially older folks. I mean, like, people are learning. This is completely foreign to a lot of people, and it's just
a little understanding and compassion goes a long way, I think, and that's true in every direction, David. That's true in your direction as well. I'm willing to be compassionate and understanding about the needs of people to adjust to this and even the unwillingness to adjust to this. That's fine. You know, don't adjust to it.
Everyone doesn't need to be involved in everyone else's lives.
Yeah, continue calling me he. I don't particularly care, but extend me the same basic respect. Why do you care so much that I call myself a woman? You seem to care way more about it than I do. So let's keep going with the phones. We have Sarah on the line from New Mexico. Sarah, what do you think about that crazy man David who keeps calling?
Well, I just want to say that he should be up in the Santa Fe because they're passing the legislation, and I found out what the U.S. there was a difference between U.S. road and a state road.
What Santa Fe legislation?
Yeah, he's always up there digging holes, and we have the session the next 2 months. But he should. I'm trying to pass that House Bill 22.
I think I know what you're talking about, right? Like
yes, speeding cameras on U.S.
You're not talking about speeding cameras, David. At one point, he mentioned something about going and digging a bunch of holes.
He doesn't stay in hotels. He digs a hole to sleep in at night.
That's not true.
No, that's what he said.
I know that's what he says.
If it's true or not, I don't know, but that's what he said.
I seem to recall.
I believe it because the hotels are about like $115, $20 per night in Santa Fe or whatever it might be.
That's
more.
really not. That's
not
like
bad
the going
at all.
rate.
It's totally normal.
This dude really
That's
alleges
actually under the going rate.
Hold on, I've never heard this. This dude really alleges that like instead of getting a hotel, he just takes a shovel and like digs himself a hole.
It's like forget a tent, forget sleeping in your car.
Right, I would sleep with my car, but he doesn't have a windshield wiper on his car.
Oh, that's right. He doesn't have a windshield.
Windshield.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he doesn't have a windshield on his car.
He said sometimes bugs fly in his mouth because that was my first question.
He says you should wear a motorcycle helmet.
That's not a bad idea, but he also says it's completely legal to drive it this way. That there's no law requiring him to have a windshield. No, but I mean, Darwinism sort of takes hold at a certain point, and it seems unwise to drive without a windshield. But this is all assuming.
Like I said, motorcycle helmet. You don't need a windshield.
Like, how many times has a rock hit your windshield while you're driving behind a big truck?
Yeah.
It's happened to me a million times.
That's happened to me on a motorcycle, and I said, thank God I'm wearing a full face motorcycle helmet.
Oh my God, that's really scary.
Right?
This is all assuming that some of David's tall tales are actually truthful, and I'm not convinced that this person actually drives around without a windshield to dig holes instead of staying in a hotel. But I love the imagery, and I hope to God it's a real thing. You can hang out with us. We're out of time for tonight, but we'll be back same time tomorrow night. You can kick it with us on our social media server at social.freetalklive.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMP